breathing is now a political act. The Republican Party has made clean air a partisan weapon. And, according to this is a new study that was just published by the American Lung Association yesterday. And they found that over 156 million Americans, roughly half of us, are now breathing poisonous air. And the Trump and the Republicans, not only do they not give a damn, they're celebrating it. I mean, it's fossil fuel billionaires and the industry that made them rich have always been major donors to the GOP. I mean, this goes way back. Certainly, Ronald Reagan was the biggest recipient of this after the 1978 Bilotti Supreme Court decision that said corporations can give unlimited amounts of money to political candidates because it's free speech and they're persons, don't you know? Ronald Reagan just floated into the White House on a tidal wave and a tsunami of oil industry in particular, but also coal industry money. So now the Trump regime came out last week and they cut millions from a Nobel Prize-winning scientist's program collaboration between NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Princeton University. And their rationale, this is crazy. This honest to God, the Trump administration released a press release saying that they were killing climate change research that the federal government had funded that was being done jointly by NOAA and Princeton, that they were killing climate change research because it, quote, this is a verbatim quote, promotes exaggerated and implausible climate threats contributing to a phenomenon known as climate anxiety, which has increased significantly among America's youth. Right. So, what are they doing? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Lee Zeldin, Trump's EPA administrator, announced on Wednesday that he's going to try to overturn the federal government's core finding that greenhouse gases are bad, along with 30 other key regulatory actions going back to Nixon. The report added that Zeldin will also be cutting CO2 limits for coal-fired power plants, tailpipe emissions, methane leaks, and ending a program requiring major industries to report their CO2 emissions. In other words, to hell with our kids, to hell with the future, to hell with the climate. There's money to be made and campaign contributions to be collected. I mean, Tuesday of last week, Trump signed an executive order declaring war on individual state initiatives to dial back carbon emissions. He ordered the Department of Justice to, quote, stop the enforcement, end quote, of such state laws. They specifically identified a climate superfund program that operates in 2 states, New York and Vermont, where those states, these are state laws, those states can claw back from the fossil fuel companies the cost of damages to their states by extreme weather. So the federal government, he signed an executive order saying, no, you can't do that. Fossil fuel oligarchs have got to be breaking out the champagne, right? So what are some of the other things that they're doing? Well, they exempted coal plants from mercury and air toxic standards. So now there's more mercury in our air. That's great for children, right? It just causes major neurological damage. They declared a national energy emergency so they could do away with a lot of the environmental reviews to develop fossil fuels. They rolled back vehicle emission standards, so the car manufacturers have no incentive to make cleaner cars. They reduced EPA enforcement. Under Trump, the first 3 months of Trump, the EPA has brought fewer cases against polluter. And in those cases that they have followed through on leftover from Biden, they've reduced the penalties that they're seeking. And now Doge and Musk and his Doge teenagers are trying to gut the EPA itself. They've weakened methane emission regulations. They provided an email address where fossil fuel companies can ask for pollution exemptions on a case-by-case basis. Just make sure you made a big donation to Donald Trump. They have eliminated climate and environmental justice web pages across the government. They've reversed President Biden's Clean Power Plan, which could lead to thousands of additional premature deaths annually due to increased air pollution. They've cut funding for environmental protections, specifically largely to the EPA, but other agencies as well. They've reduced public land protections. They've reduced the size of national monuments and open protected lands to fossil fuel drilling. They've rolled back clean water protections. They narrowed the definition of protected waters of the United States. This is going to affect our drinking water. They are undermining scientific research. They want to limit the use of scientific studies in policymaking. So, yeah, we're going to make decisions about, pollution in the air, but we're not going to base them on science. They have reversed the Paris Climate Agreement commitment and pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. They're promoting fossil fuel exports. They lifted Biden-era restrictions on fossil fuel exports. And they've reduced air quality monitoring. They're cutting air pollution monitoring programs. So, the air is getting dirtier now. In fact, it is measurably dirtier now than it was just 1 year ago because of all these changes that the Trump administration has made just in the last 3 months. And yet they don't want you to know how much dirtier the air is. So, Republicans are refusing to do town halls. They're refusing to answer questions about this. They're hiding behind a timid media that itself is afraid to raise these issues, which leaves it up to us. So what do? Well, number one, get out in the streets as often as possible. Number two, call your representatives, particularly if they're Republicans. It only takes 4 or 5 Republicans in the House and Senate to change the course of history. Number three, make your voice heard on social media, write letters to the editor, call into talk shows, share messages like these with friends and family. And finally, contribute, if you can, to politicians who are taking brave stands against the oligarchy. This is not just politics. This is the slow motion slaughter disguised as deregulation. The Republicans won't answer for it. They won't debate it. They won't hold town halls. The media tiptoes, the billionaires cheer, and Trump signs away your children's future with a grin. But we have to fight this. It's not just about the air. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan. This is from Chapter 1, The Power of Data. In November 2017, my Apple MacBook Pro was stolen. It happened on the island of Ibiza, where I was visiting my friend, a documentary filmmaker. We were thinking of making a series of short films to illustrate innovative uses of new technology around the world. We sat together writing down examples of technological innovation, subversion, and creativity we'd already witnessed. We discussed themes I explore in this book, such as surveillance, the gig economy, and the future of work, artificial intelligence, and cryptocurrencies. After uploading our ideas to Google's cloud-based storage platform, Google Drive, we took a short break, locking our laptops in the trunk of our rented car. When we returned, both laptops were gone. Although upset, I was also relieved. I'd be able to recover most of my data because almost all of it was in the cloud. That was what I signed on to when I stored my files with Google as well as with Apple, Microsoft, and Dropbox. But in the bargain, I'd allowed them to profit from my data. It dawned on me, given the terms of service I'd agreed to, that the value of the data of my data to the storage companies was far greater than the value of my laptop to the thief. How many of us are fully aware that companies providing us with cloud storage have ways to monetize our data? They use targeted advertising, for instance, and charge fees once we get hooked on the security and peace of mind that their free services offer. We put faith in these companies to store our files securely, but our private information may no longer remain private if, let's say, the government asks to search through our data. It's also not private because all this data is surveilled, computed, and often manipulated in mysterious ways to influence and shape our behaviors as these corporations see fit. By creating accounts with these companies, we give them access to ourselves. So when we consent to privacy policies, in reality, we're signing on to systems of surveillance never before seen in human history, and we do so without being included or consulted. By desiring to keep our data accessible and recoverable, we lock ourselves into using their services. As I thought about getting my files back in Ibiza, I wondered, does access to my own property have to come with such strings attached? In my relationship to Apple, I find the strings impossible to untie. By purchasing an Apple laptop, I had unwittingly transformed from a customer into a part of the company's product line. I had provided Apple with private data and trusted Apple to protect it. Now, to retrieve that data, I had to purchase a new laptop with Apple-owned peripherals and devices. So I caught the next flight to Madrid. I then took the train to the city's Apple store located in Puerto del Sol. In many ways, this central plaza still serves in its centuries-old role as a landmark and gathering place for the entire Spanish nation, a point from which numerous roads emanate. With its distinctive aesthetic and its strategic placement in a civic space, the Apple Store stood out among the adjacent parliamentary and government buildings as if the global brand were more powerful than Spain itself. The day I was there, more people entered and left the Apple Store than passed through the doors of my neighboring building. In 2017, Apple, a private corporation worth more than $1 trillion, actually began to conceptualize its retail stores as town squares, thereby branding itself an integral part of our everyday lives. Other big technology corporations describe themselves in similar terms. Facebook CEO and founder Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, refers to the company as a social infrastructure for the global community. So what we have in the digital world are privately owned public spheres. They're branded as public, civic, and virtuous, but in reality are dominated by a single logic, extending profitability and economic value. How can these companies' interests be the same as the public interest? Like many other large corporations, Apple is shareholder-owned and therefore primarily accountable to its investors and executives, rather than to its employees, customers, or the general public. I had not begun to unpack the meaning of all this until I realized how monumental the Puerto del Sol Apple Store actually was, as an icon and a structure. As I walked into the store, an Apple employee invited me to purchase a new machine, log onto my iCloud account, and retrieve from Apple Cloud Storage the data that I lost from my stolen laptop. These transactions, completed in less than an hour, were simple and efficient. My data was extraterritorial, easily retrievable in Spain, and likely would be in most other countries. Purchasing a new laptop and getting my data back supported Apple's economic model. National borders were no threat or hindrance. The same was true with retrieving data I had stored on other corporate cloud servers managed by Google and Dropbox. In technology circles, this saying has made the rounds. If you're not the customer, then you're the product. Many of today's technologies come to us for free, but in return, our personal lives come for free to these technologies. But they are accessible for the company's profit and gain. Yes, when we search Google, we look for information, but do we realize that Google is also searching us? Users, and it goes on from there. So the book is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Monday, top of the week to you. It's a brand new day, a brand new week, and a lot going on in the world. Donald Trump has caved, at least in part, and his tariff terror negotiations or positions with China. The deal now is 10% tariff on U.S. goods going to China, 30% tariff on Chinese goods going to the U.S. Will that be enough to revive shipping? Are we still going to see shortages? A, I'm sure it'll revive a lot of the shipping. B, we will be seeing some shortages, and we will be seeing some significant inflation from the damage that's already been done. Clearly, this is Trump's thing, right? Screw something up, then fix it, and then claim victory. Hey, I fixed it. What I screwed up. It's incredible. Also, the machines are learning, and they're learning to be fascists. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Also, what is habeas corpus, and why might Donald Trump want to suspend it? And Republicans have unveiled their plan to cut millions of Americans from health care to pay for their tax cut for billionaires. This was just a few hours ago, late Sunday night. Republicans in Congress, pushed this thing out of committee in the House. Well, I'll tell you about it in about 10 minutes. Also, in the second hour of our program, it looks like Trump caved on the tariffs. I mentioned that at the open, and I'll do a deeper dive into that at the second hour of the program. Also, what to know about Delaney Hall. This is the detention facility where the mayor of Newark was arrested. Critics say the erection of the immigrant detention facility in a contaminated area violates state and local laws, and the city is saying they don't have a valid occupancy permit. Also, apparently, America is now unloved worldwide. Putin and Xi are actually more popular worldwide right now than Trump. Yikes. We'll dig into that in the second hour of the program. In the third hour of our program, $400 million flying palace coming to Donald Trump's airport soon. And did you know that the Trump family is striking business deals left and right with these potentates in the Middle East? I've got kind of a deep dive on that I think you're going to find fascinating. But to start out today and to start out this week, my Hartmann Report daily take, hartmannreport.com, the machines are learning, and they're learning to be fascists. And, I start out here by pointing out that Pope Leo XIV on Friday or Saturday, in one of his speeches, he identified the main threat facing humanity. Now, this Pope and the Pope before him, Francis, have both identified climate change as a major crisis for the United States and for the world. But now this Pope Leo XIV just labeled AI as one of the main threats facing humanity, saying it poses a challenge to, quote, human dignity, justice, and labor. And he's right, but it's even worse than that. It actually represents a threat to democracy itself. I mean, in every generation, you have enemies of democracy who step forward. They lie, they divide, they intimidate, they exploit every available tool to consolidate power. They weaponize the media. In the 1930s, it was the radio. In the 2010s, it was the social media. Now in 2025, it's artificial intelligence. And make no mistake, AI is not just another technology. AI is power scaled. in the hands of the far right, it becomes arguably the single most effective tool for dismantling democracy that's ever been invented. I mean, authoritarians love this, whether it's Putin, Orban, Modi, Netanyahu, you name it. They've figured this out. They understand it instinctively, its ability to simulate, to deceive, to surveil, and to dominate. It's mind-boggling. AI, here's how it works. AI can now generate millions of personalized political messages in seconds, each calibrated to manipulate a voter's specific fear or biases. It can create entire fake news outlets, populate them with AI-generated journalists, flood your social media feed with content that looks real, sounds real, feels familiar, all without a single human behind it. Imagine what Joseph Goebbels could have done. But authoritarian regimes can and already are using AI also to surveil and intimidate their civilians. China has perfected this. Face recognition technology throughout the country, social media scores that determine, who you can date, what kind of job you get, and where you can live based on how loyal you are to the regime. I mean, it's pretty wild stuff, right? And none of this is like theoretical. We saw AI-generated robocalls impersonating Joe Biden, telling voters to stay home, and millions did. In the next election cycle, next year, and in 3 years, we may see entire election campaigns waged by AI bots, pretending to be voters or influencers or even public officials. And if you think that's like beyond the pale, this is a quote from the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. They did a report on AI. Quote, meanwhile, deep-fake audio clips of British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Slovakia's opposition head Mikhail Simica ignited social media controversies when they spread rapidly before fact-checkers could expose them as fabrications. The destructive power of deepfakes also hit home in Turkey when a presidential candidate withdrew from the May 2023 election after explicit AI-generated videos went viral. In Argentina's 2003 October presidential election, both leading candidates deployed deep fakes by creating campaign posters and materials that mocked their opponents, tactics that escalated into full-blown AI mimetic warfare to sway voters. Now, in the case here in the United States, the goal often, even all around the world, often isn't just to win elections. It's to destroy people's confidence in democracy itself. Once people believe that both sides lie to you, that you can't believe anything anymore, then strongmen step into that void and say, we will bring order, we will bring purity, we will bring salvation. And when they do, AI will be there to enforce it. I mean, imagine a future where police departments outsource their decision-making to so-called neutral algorithms that have been created with the biases of their creators. I mean, just look at what Musk is doing with Grok over on Twitter, or X. He's got an AI program there that he is training on the content on X. So you've got a Nazi-indoctrinated AI. This is, where loyalty to the regime is rewarded with access, or in the case of X, more followers, and dissent is flagged by invisible systems that you can't even appeal. I mean, that's not democracy, that's techno-feudalism wrapped in a flag. And it's already happening. It's happening right now in Bangladesh, Colombia, Ethiopia, Guatemala, the Philippines, and Thailand, according to the Carnegie Endowment. They write also, quote, in the EU's eastern neighborhood, countries like Georgia, Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine face a deluge of hybrid threats and AI-generated disinformation campaigns aimed at destabilizing societies, disrupting electoral processes, and derailing people's democratic aspirations. This isn't science fiction. This is where we're at right now. So what do we do? Well, let's regulate AI before this genie is out of the bottle altogether. I mean, it's, say, 80-90% of the way there. We should ban the use of deep fakes in political ads. We should enforce transparency on algorithmic decision-making. We need to create unbiased, public, open source AI alternatives to corporate control models. We need to create a disinformation infrastructure that would bring biological or nuclear weapons the same as we would with biological or nuclear weapons, because they're not just dangerous, they're potentially civilization ending. And we need to demand that social media outlets publish their algorithms so we can see how we're being manipulated. History teaches us that once authoritarianism takes root, it doesn't give up power easily. The longer we wait, the more embedded, autonomous, and intelligent these systems become, the more dangerous. We're not just fighting bad actors anymore. We're fighting machines trained to think like them. So this time the fight isn't against the usual suspects. This time, the algorithm is watching. Up next, what is habeas corpus? And Republicans have unveiled their plan to cut 6 million Americans off their health care in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Stay with me.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. 16 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. Stay with us. And welcome back. Rick in Seattle. Hey, Rick, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I'm calling because just a week ago, a guy named Roger, who I don't know from Seattle, where I'm from, called up and he asked a question, where have all the folk singers gone? Referring to Where Have All the Flowers Gone, the song by Pete Seeger, where I sing his songs at the folk festival here in Seattle. I'll get to in a minute. But first of all, I just want to answer the question that Pete Seeger used to say, that the folk process just simply means that it's whatever people remember, the songs we sing in our cars, the songs that you and Louise put out that people save and remember. The songs by a guy named Jesse Wells. Have you heard of him?
I have not.
Jessewelles. He has about 2 million followers. He's a young guy from the Ozarks who just has a knack for writing. He puts the news into songs. And I really recommend everybody check him out because he's an example of the folk process just moving right on. Mm-hmm. And you might call them protest songs, but if you look at protest songs on the internet, you can see there's like 50 best protest songs, 100 best protest songs, not just some limited to the folk scare of the 60s, but another thing that our listeners can check out. But I wanted to make sure that people knew that there are folk festivals, there's bluegrass festivals and others.
Oh yeah.
And if you're anywhere near Seattle, and you are yourself, so is Mateo, who answers your phone calls, there's the folk festival that we call the Northwest Folklife Festival. It's been going since 1972. It's free by donation. There's like 250,000 people that come every year, 6,000 performers. There's 18 stages to choose from. And it starts off this year on a Friday. It's 4 days. And on one of the first stages, I do a thing called Singing Like Pete Seeger Liked. I hope anybody near the Seattle area can come and do what Pete Seeger said. That's what he liked. The way he liked to sing was basically not alone, singing out loud, and not worrying too much about what you sound like, but what it feels like.
Yeah, I get it. So when and where is this folk festival in Seattle? And do you know if there's one in Portland?
No, but we're a good. No, I don't know. There's it's the Memorial Day weekend every year, and so it would be like
in a couple of weeks.
I'd be there on the 23rd, Friday after this Friday at 4 p.m. And then it goes all weekend long with all these different stages.
Very cool.
There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of different things around singing. A lot of folks who are doing singing to support our hands-off actions and Tesla takedown and stuff like that. Sometimes are called community singing or song circles. There's different ways that people can look on their local search in the local internet and see what's going on in your neighborhood. it's a great way to just like try, kind of like back in the civil rights era, we have these songs that were kind of like chants, basically, that turned into songs. And "We Shall Overcome" is a great example that.
Very cool.
Woke up this morning with my mind.
Rick, thanks for the info. I appreciate it. It's 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. There is a long history of right-wing, conservative, Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices becoming liberals, or at least becoming reasonable. Earl Warren is probably the best-known example. He was, a right-wing governor of California. He was a hard-ass Alameda County prosecutor, a district attorney, and when Eisenhower put him on the court, a year later he did the Brown versus Brown v. Board of Education case. He ended discrimination, racial discrimination in schools, or at least tried to end it. So why are Republican billionaires now sucking up to conservative members of the Supreme Court? In my opinion, it's not a quid pro quo. They're not trying to get specific votes on specific issues. They're trying to prevent them from doing what Earl Warren did, which is waking up and voting for the benefit of America rather than just their patrons. There's a whole piece about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
They built a god out of silicon, gave it eyes that never sleep, taught it how to mimic voices and how to lie and how to creep. Now it's whispering in the wires, writing stories that ain't true. The truth is dying slowly in the coming AI coup. Once we had a ballot box, now it's just a game of smoke. Deepfakes in the living room, your grandma's feed's gone broke. They're training bots to sway your vote and hide what's real for you. Democracy is dangling in the coming AI coup. Oh, say, can you see? Or are your eyes deceived? The screen says trust the system, but who programs what you believe? When the code obeys the tyrant and the facts are false and few, we will march into freedom. We'll be marched by the machine through and through and through. That's the playbook, that's the blueprint of the coming AI coup. They say it's just technology, but it's soaked in power and greed. It doesn't vote, it doesn't bleed. It just watches what you read. Sheriff's training out.
Welcome back, 23 minutes past the hour. So, wow, dystopian music. What is habeas corpus and why might Donald Trump want to suspend it? We've talked about this before, but I think it's worth revisiting now that Stephen Miller last week came out and said that the administration, it's right there in the Constitution, the privilege of habeas corpus. I'm sorry, it's not a privilege, it's a right. And that right may only be suspended according to the Constitution during time of invasion as, or public emergency, as Stephen Miller pointed out. But we haven't been invaded. You've got multiple judges who've said there's no invasion of the United States. What are you doing invoking the Constitution like this? But, this right, most people track this right back to King John signing the Magna Carta in 1215 on the plain of Runnymede in northern England. But it actually goes back even before that. Of course, back in those days, it was habeas corpus, which means produce the body. It basically means you can't be put in jail without some legal process, without the ability to argue against your own confinement. You must have the right and ability to speak on your own behalf. That's habeas corpus, essentially. And Stephen Miller says, we want to get rid of that because we've been invaded. right? And we have suspended it in the past. Abraham Lincoln suspended it in 1861, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. It was Roger Taney, the guy who did the Dred Scott decision. And so what did Lincoln do? He went to Congress. And in 1863, Congress suspended habeas corpus for the balance of the Civil War. It was also suspended during the Reconstruction period, President Grant did, and it was also suspended during World War II, after Pearl Harbor, which was used, and then FDR used that as the rationalization to intern the Japanese, which is just an eternal stain on America's history and on FDR's reputation, and one we should learn from. In 2008, the Supreme Court said that habeas corpus even applies to people in Gitmo. And in April of this year, they said that people who are, being deported under Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, which itself is pretty skeezy, have to be given notice. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, last night, or this morning, as the case may be, House Republicans unveiled legislation that will rip Medicaid coverage from millions of Americans, 8.6 million people to be specific, a total of $715 billion in cuts to Medicaid, all to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. And Frank Pallone, the Democrat from New Jersey, said, let's be clear, Republican leadership released this bill under cover of night because they don't want people to know their true intentions. And I think Trump did his whole drug thing, song and dance this morning, which appears to be just smoke and mirrors. I think he did this so that we wouldn't be talking about the Medicaid cuts. Frank Pallone goes on to say, in no uncertain terms, millions of Americans will lose their health care coverage, hospitals will close, seniors will not be able to access the care they need, and premiums will rise for millions of people. Taking health care away from children and moms, seniors in nursing homes is shameful, and people with disabilities, shameful. Yeah, amen.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Meanwhile, these cuts to the health services could represent a real danger, and Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, has something to say about cutting Medicaid. I'll tell you about that in just a second and pick up your calls. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan. This is from Chapter 1, The Power of Data. In November 2017, my Apple MacBook Pro was stolen. It happened on the island of Ibiza, where I was visiting my friend, a documentary filmmaker. We were thinking of making a series of short films to illustrate innovative uses of new technology around the world. We sat together writing down examples of technological innovation, subversion, and creativity we'd already witnessed. We discussed themes I explore in this book, such as surveillance, the gig economy, and the future of work, artificial intelligence, and cryptocurrencies. After uploading our ideas to Google's cloud-based storage platform, Google Drive, we took a short break, locking our laptops in the trunk of our rented car. When we returned, both laptops were gone. Although upset, I was also relieved. I'd be able to recover most of my data because almost all of it was in the cloud. That was what I signed on to when I stored my files with Google as well as with Apple, Microsoft, and Dropbox. But in the bargain, I'd allowed them to profit from my data. It dawned on me, given the terms of service I'd agreed to, that the value of the data of my data to the storage companies was far greater than the value of my laptop to the thief. How many of us are fully aware that companies providing us with cloud storage have ways to monetize our data? They use targeted advertising, for instance, and charge fees once we get hooked on the security and peace of mind that their free services offer. We put faith in these companies to store our files securely, but our private information may no longer remain private if, let's say, the government asks to search through our data. It's also not private because all this data is surveilled, computed, and often manipulated in mysterious ways to influence and shape our behaviors as these corporations see fit. By creating accounts with these companies, we give them access to ourselves. So when we consent to privacy policies, in reality, we're signing on to systems of surveillance never before seen in human history. And we do so without being included or consulted. By desiring to keep our data accessible and recoverable, we lock ourselves into using their services. As I thought about getting my files back in Ibiza, I wondered, does access to my own property have to come with such strings attached? In my relationship to Apple, I find the strings impossible to untie. By purchasing an Apple laptop, I had unwittingly transformed from a customer into a part of the company's product line. I had provided Apple with private data and trusted Apple to protect it. Now, to retrieve that data, I had to purchase a new laptop with Apple-owned peripherals and devices. So I caught the next flight to Madrid. I then took the train to the city's Apple store located in Puerto del Sol. In many ways, this central plaza still serves in its centuries-old role as a landmark and gathering place for the entire Spanish nation, a point from which numerous roads emanate. With its distinctive aesthetic and its strategic placement in a civic space, the Apple Store stood out among the adjacent parliamentary and government buildings as if the global brand were more powerful than Spain itself. The day I was there, more people entered and left the Apple Store than passed through the doors of my neighboring building. In 2017, Apple, a private corporation worth more than $1 trillion, actually began to conceptualize its retail stores as town squares, thereby branding itself an integral part of our everyday lives. Other big technology corporations describe themselves in similar terms. Facebook CEO and founder Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, refers to the company as a social infrastructure for the global community. So what we have in the digital world are privately owned public spheres. They're branded as public, civic, and virtuous, but in reality are dominated by a single logic, extending profitability and economic value. How can these companies' interests be the same as the public interest? Like many other large corporations, Apple is shareholder-owned and therefore primarily accountable to its investors and executives, rather than employees, customers, or the general public. I had not begun to unpack the meaning of all this until I realized how monumental the Puerto del Sol Apple Store actually was, as an icon and a structure. As I walked into the store, an Apple employee invited me to purchase a new machine, log onto my iCloud account, and retrieve from Apple Cloud Storage the data that I lost from my stolen laptop. These transactions, completed in less than an hour, were simple and efficient. My data was extraterritorial, easily retrievable in Spain, and likely would be in most other countries. Purchasing a new laptop and getting my data back supported Apple's economic model. National borders were no threat or hindrance. The same was true with retrieving data I had stored on other corporate cloud servers managed by Google and Dropbox. In technology circles, this saying has made the rounds. If you're not the customer, then you're the product. Many of today's technologies come to us for free, but in return, our personal lives come for free to these technologies, but accessible for the company's profit and gain. Yes, when we search Google, we look for information, but do we realize that Google is also searching us? Users, and it goes on from there. So the book is Beyond the Valley by Ramesh Srinivasan.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
In black robes took the gavel and lied, said money's got a voice and the people got denied. Turned speech into dollars, turned votes into gold, sold out our future future while the nation gotta roll. $1, one vote, that's the game that they play. Now the rich make the rules and the rest get betrayed. They gutted our rights, threw them out in the street. Now democracy's drowning in a dark money sea. The billionaire coup is complete, no one stopped it. 5 on the court and the people just lost it. Bought off the ballot, sold off the land. Now the law's just a weapon in a rich man's hand.
35 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So, as I mentioned, and there's like, I'm just boggled, right? Yeah, when Louise and I were putting the show together this morning, between 5:30 and around 8 o'clock when I came into the studio, we had MSNBC on. There was no mention of this, at least that I recall. If there was, I wasn't paying attention, and it must have been very brief. And I've had CNN on in the studio here since I got here, and no mention of it. That last night, Republicans in the House of Representatives voted out of committee legislation that would drop 8 million Americans off Medicaid. Seniors in nursing homes, children in low-income families, the working poor. They're doing it through little tweaks to all the rules, basically, that qualify you for Medicaid. Raising eligibility requirements, increasing work requirements, just all kinds of stuff. And now some of the Republicans are pushing back. Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri. Now keep in mind, Missouri last year, I'm sorry, it was in 2020, 5 years ago, Missouri had a ballot initiative to expand Medicaid across the state, via Obamacare. Missouri was one of the red states that had not expanded Medicaid. There's still, I think, 11 of them, and maybe 10. And most of them former Confederate states, perhaps all of them, I'm not certain. But anyhow, his state did it. And now there's 21% of the people in Missouri are on Medicaid. 21%, that's how pervasive poverty is in these red states. And so Josh Hawley comes out and he says, Mr. Trump has promised working class tax cuts and protection for working class social insurance such as Medicaid, but now a noisy contingent of corporatist Republicans, call it the party's Wall Street wing, is urging Congress to ignore all that and get back to the old-time religion, corporate giveaways, preferences for capital, and deep cuts to social insurance. That wing of the party wants Republicans to build our big, beautiful bill around slashing health insurance for the working poor, but that argument is both morally wrong and politically suicidal, says Republican Senator Josh Hawley. He adds, it's safe to say the Trump coalition was not pulling the lever for Medicaid cuts in November. In other words, our voters didn't vote for this. He says, but many of my House and Senate colleagues keep pushing for these substantial cuts. Yeah, you think? Meanwhile, the mass terminations and cuts in the Department of Health and Human Services, Bob Kennedy's place, have gutted key programs from child support services to HIV treatment and created a real danger that disease outbreaks are going to be missed. This is disease surveillance is how we know when something unusual is happening with people's health. An epidemiologist at HHS said, it's the system that lets us spot patterns, find outbreaks early, and respond before more people get sick. But they cut 70 staff just in the South Carolina Department of Public Health. Federally, the HHS workforce has dropped from 82,000 to 62,000. There's 20,000 people have been laid off. And Trump's budget proposal calls for an additional 26% or $33 billion cut to health and human services. And one of the things they just shut down. This is how bright these guys are. The maternal and child health program. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. The Administration for Child and Families inside HHS is responsible for enforcing court-ordered child support payments. Got that? They just shut it down. And for every $1 that they collected, or every $1 that we pay for their being there, they collect $5 in child support. But no more. We don't need those bureaucrats, right? Amazing. All right, so what's on your mind today? Let's pick up some calls here. Don in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Hey, Don, what's up?
Hi, Tom. This morning, I happened to be working on my computer and was sort of half watching MSNBC, and I saw the Trump, the opening salvos on his new drug policy.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that they had passed the thing last night. I mean, it's been obvious that they were going to cut off $800 billion out of Medicaid.
Yeah.
But, it not only was that very sophisticated, when the least attention is paid, and then, like you say, using this diversion in the morning.
Yeah, and it's phony baloney because it's an executive order. Executive orders do not have the force of law. This is something that Congress would have to pass. This is just Trump doing a performance, period.
Oh, yeah, and it'll be challenged in the courts, and it'll never really happen, the drug prices and everything. But we don't seem to be responding very well. Remember back during the Iran hostage situation, one of those right-wing commentators came on every day, day 373 of, the hostages and everything. We need something like, day 750 of the Trumpian war on women. Millions of, and then the number of women who've died, and thousands of women. Now, are we probably up to 1,300 or 1,400 women dying, tortured and murdered by these policies, but about 1.5 or 2 times as many are killed by domestic partners, intimate domestic partners, and they're poor women who live in red states where they've loosened the gun laws, and these maniacs get these guns and turn them on them. I mean, we have so many. It's not just that we have so many issues, and it's easy. You can put an electronic backdrop. Every time a Democrat speaks, there should be some kind of theme back behind him. Right. I mean, that's a simple thing. Yeah. It doesn't need AI, and people will be tricked by AI, of course, but a lot of people won't be. People who are growing up with this stuff, they're a little tricky. They're smarter about it, and older people like us, I don't even look at it.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT, or there's a couple of AI programs that I use as search engines now. This is actually starting to hurt Google's business model because, the dumb searches don't work. But excellent points all done. Thank you very much for calling and making them. Adam in Dallas, Texas. Hey, Adam, what's on your mind today?
Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well.
Fine, thank you.
Before I begin, I just wanted to see if you reported about Virginia Dufresne, which was, I think, an Epstein accuser. She died about 3 weeks ago,
yeah,
and
she committed suicide, heard about it. Is the allegation.
Yeah, well, supposedly, but I haven't heard anything in the media about it. Have you?
I saw some reports at the time that it happened, and there was some stuff on social media about, people thinking that it was awful suspicious for a suicide. But, Jeffrey Epstein and probably Donald Trump, I mean, God only knows, just ruined her life. I mean, she was, 15, 16 when she was basically turned into a prostitute by these people.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about 2 questions if you have time. The first one is, when I get on any type of forum and I call out people on the right, they just automatically respond by, "You must be a communist." So I was wondering, when did Democrats or someone who doesn't agree with the right, when did that labeling of communism begin? Because it doesn't. In the 50s. It obviously doesn't have. In the 50s, was that due to McCarthyism?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see. And then my second question is, how did universities get associated with liberalism? Because I have my degree, and I don't recall any liberalism or liberal program going through university. And most universities have a liberal arts program, but they're not connecting the fact that
it's got nothing. Liberal arts has nothing to do with politics. Liberal arts simply means the soft sciences, literature, art, government, civics, those kinds of things. I think that the problem for the right has always been that science is not their friend. This goes back to the Scopes monkey trial in 1924, I think it was, where William Jennings Bryan argued that Mr. Was it Scopes? I forget the name of the guy, the teacher, should go to jail for teaching evolution. And so they say, oh, if you're teaching evolution, you must be a liberal. Oh, if you're in favor of civil rights, you must be a liberal. Oh, if you're in favor of following the Constitution, you must be a liberal. Oh, if you follow science, you must be a liberal. If you're not a religious fanatic, you must be a liberal. If you follow Jesus' teachings, you must be a liberal. So, and people who are educated tend to understand, the benefit of science and the value of understanding history and, following the Constitution and embracing democracy. So, this the war against educated people and education systems really goes back. I mean, the Confederacy actually was shutting down colleges and schools back in the 1840s and 50s. This is what fascists do. Adam, I got to run, but thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archive.
45 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a minute. It's your media support group for We the People, the Thom Hartmann Program. And welcome back. Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger. Thanks for listening to KBCS. What's on your mind today?
Well, thank you for plugging that public radio station. Just to follow up on your question earlier, there's the PFF, and apparently it's in January, February. So go on their website, Portland Folk Festival.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The PFF.
But it's about the size of the Seattle bluegrass, what we call wintergrass. So it's just a weekend event in a hotel, where ours that was previously mentioned takes over the whole Seattle center.
Wow.
So it's a humongous event.
Yeah.
And we have now spawned a bumper shoot, but that's a pay.
Yeah.
The one in May is free.
Well, that's great.
They ask people to make a donation.
Yeah, what's the, Portland's only 600,000-700,000 people. What's the population of Seattle?
You'd have to look it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm guessing it's a couple million, though. It's a much bigger city.
Well, I think what we do is draw in the whole Western Washington, because that's why the Washington Post had the Everett Herald for a while, and then they sold it off.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to get into, sort of in the Vancouver to Los Angeles corridor type idea.
Right, I get
it. Of Western, the West Coast.
I get it. Well, thanks for the heads up on that, Roger.
Sure. Well, I'm one of my good friends is a regular performer at the Folk Life.
Yeah. Did you want to? It says here that you actually called about Trump tariffs and Canadian VAT.
Yeah. I thank you for suggesting the morbidly rich, but what about the Orwell oligarchs? In that some pigs are more equal than others.
Yep.
For example, but you can take almost any little quip out of either 1984 or Animal Farm and find that it's very apt to our newest crop of oligarchs.
Yeah.
But that was a way to introduce a couple rants that you might look at, like at least in the state area, we have the three-legged stool of income, and that you have in Oregon. We have sales in Washington State, and then New York, California, and New Jersey have both. And everybody has a property tax. So why don't you have a rant on the value-added tax, which I think would be a better, more reasonable alternative to the tariff, because the tariff, the billionaires know what a tariff and how it's going to affect them, but we don't see it until after the next election. So, we could stop the tariffs now, and the people a year from November are going to still feel the effects of the raised prices and the falsely raised prices and the minorly raised prices from the tariffs. So I think we need to maybe study how the oligarchs are able to get around the three-legged stools.
Well, you realize VAT
sales,
taxes,
income, and property.
I got it. You realize VAT taxes are taxes on goods produced in your own country. You have
Canada. He brings up Canada. They have the GST. We go up to Canada quite a bit in Seattle, so maybe not so much in Oregon, but you see GST and you think, it must be the Canadian lottery. Well, maybe you'll win, GST lottery by paying the national sales tax, but that's the way that Republicans can get around saying, "Oh, we didn't raise taxes, we just raised tariffs."
Right. No, I get it. Roger, thanks for the call. It's in just a couple seconds. It'll be 10 minutes before the hour, and I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. You know, we've all gotten so used to living in a country where people are trying to crowdfund like cancer research for children. St. Jude's is a wonderful charity, but we're the only developed country in the world that needs, where you have to go to people and beg for money in order to treat children with cancer. Or Shriners, I mean, another great charity, but shouldn't we all be funding children who are born with birth defects and problems like that? We're probably the only country in the world where you can sell your life insurance policy because Social Security doesn't cover your retirement. I mean, it's probably not happening anywhere else in the world. Or reverse mortgage your home because you can't afford it. I mean, this is crazy that we are living in a country where No Kid Hungry, a charity. You can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed I wrote about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled America's Sickest Reality Show, Crowdfunding Cancer Care While Billionaires Hoard Billions. Check it out. Back 9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. John in Roselle, Illinois. Hey, John, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How are you? Thanks for taking my call.
I'm fine.
Hey, I heard yesterday on the news that there's going to be negotiations Thursday on the Ukraine war. Putin determined that it should be in Turkey, and Trump's pushing Zelensky to go to this as part of having further United States support. Mm-hmm. To me, it sounds like a setup. If I was Zelensky, I would have a huge contingent of bodyguards.
Yeah. Well, the story here is a fascinating one, and I'm frankly astonished that the American media has not been telling this story, or at least if they are, I haven't seen it. And that is that you had the leaders of Poland, the United Kingdom, France, and there was one other country, I'm forgetting right off the top of my head, but there were Germany. It was also Germany. These four European leaders all on Friday, or maybe Saturday, visited Ukraine. And they issued a joint statement. They actually made a phone call to Donald Trump collectively, the group of them. And they issued a joint statement saying that Vladimir Putin had 30 hours, or maybe it was 36 hours, basically a day and a half, to come to the table for peace talks, or those four European countries were going to provide Ukraine with their most advanced weaponry and allow Ukraine to use that against Russia in any way it wants. And that apparently scared Putin. And because Putin said, okay, cool, I'll meet you in Turkey. This week we'll start the meetings. And that caused them to back off. I think most people looking at this are saying, oh yeah, it's just, another scam. I mean, Putin doesn't have any intention of not, trying to win this war and steal all of Ukraine. He's already gotten, the equivalent of the eastern seaboard of the U.S. in terms of territory. But that's what's going on. But I'm with you. I'm sure Putin chose Turkey because he knows that Erdogan won't arrest him. All the other EU countries, there's an arrest warrant out for him.
They said Putin's not going to be there. And to me, it sounds like a setup for Zelensky. I mean,
I thought Putin was going to be there.
I heard he's not.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, that's a real worrisome thing because that's like got assassination.
I would be very surprised if Erdogan would be willing to take the heat that would be associated with Zelensky being attacked or killed or imprisoned or whatever during peace talks in Turkey. I would just be astonished. I'm not real concerned about that.
I hope that something does happen that people point to Trump as being the one forcing Zelensky's hand on showing up at this thing.
I'm not sure that's true. I think Zelensky really wants the slaughter of his people to stop. And he's...
Oh, no, I know that, but I also heard Trump is the one that is demanding that he does that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to withhold American support.
Well, it's possible. It's entirely possible. I think, though, that, you know, these 4 European leaders, you know, calling Trump from Ukraine, I think that had a hell of a lot more impact than anybody's giving credit for it. John, thanks for the call. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Look, I just wanted to say Trump and his regime, what they're doing, I didn't want to believe it at first when I first came up with it, but I'm sure of it now. I don't know if you ever heard of the game show Deal or No Deal, but what they're basically doing is Deal or No Deal Dictator Island instead of Deal or No Deal Bachelor Island.
I'm not familiar with the game, so you'll have to explain.
Well, in Deal or No Deal, they just, it's very popular around the world. And what you try to do is you just try to make the best deal. Like the last guy that won Bachelor Island, he won the highest amount ever, $5.6 million. But he hasn't been paid any of it yet. And they asked him about it, and he said he's spending it. He's spending the money, and he's trying to stay quiet about it, the fact that he hasn't received it. And, you know, that's just the way he's negotiating right now with the company that owns the show. And essentially, everything in the Trump regime as an authoritarian is fungible. This is where me and you diverge from it. There are certain things in the Constitution we think are not fungible, Tom. And I don't know, one of my favorite callers, Morris, he was talking about Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. Mm-hmm. Ibrahim Traore, to get the support of the Russians, he's banned homosexuality for the first time. That was never a thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry?
Yeah, Nate says that that's not the case. You might want to fact check that.
Oh, no, it's the case. He's criminalized it in Burkina Faso. Huh. And that doesn't mean that he's necessarily against it. What that means is Russia doing the hybrid warfare they see that as a key to leveraging influence.
Yeah, Russia's been promoting the criminalization of homosexuality all across Africa, as has the Republican Party in the United States. That's why, you know, you've got the kill the gay law in Uganda. Dave, I'll have to check into that. Dave, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Looks like Trump caved on the tariffs. Let's talk about that. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
This is from the last two chapters, and we're reading from page 258. In 1961, a new president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was inaugurated at the age of 43. With him, a new generation had taken the crown from the older generation as represented by General Eisenhower. There was triumphant talk of a new frontier, presumably to be crossed by all of us into a bright new land where the only shadow that marred the prospect was that of the hideous, murderous specter of international communism centered upon the Soviet Union, against whom JFK had sworn to bear any burden to ensure the ultimate victory of freedom, liberty, and so on. But early on, starting in 1959, under the general direction of then Vice President Richard Nixon, who had many interesting Cuban mob connections. Yes, Bibi Rebozo, his mysterious friend, was also linked not only to mobsters, but to the Cuban dictator Batista, who had been overthrown by Fidel Castro, to the annoyance of the mob, an annoyance that turned to fury when Castro shut down, if only briefly, the mafia-run Havana casinos. Elements of the CIA were soon attempting to murder Castro, who, like all Nixon enemies, was, if not yet a communist, worst, a communist dupe. The presidential election of 1960 was a close one, fought by Nixon and John Kennedy, an attractive Massachusetts senator whose father had, ironically, dealings with many mobsters during the pre-World War II period, as well as at the time of the prohibition of alcohol. The late film producer Ray Stark told me how, during the short presidency of JFK, Joe Kennedy and Frank Costello, the retired New York mob overlord, would often have dinner at Kennedy's Central Park South apartment and rehash old crimes, often in the country of a retired teamster who gave great massages. Joe's mob connections were useful to Jack in the 1960 election and could easily have saved JFK's life in 1963 had Bobby Kennedy, in the interest of building himself up in the public eyes, not started arresting important mobsters, particularly in the so-called Appalachian Mob Conference, bust, where they had all come together to confer about the secession of the leadership of the New York mob. I've long since forgotten how I first heard of the plot to kill JFK, while I had no idea at all of the Kennedy brothers' plot to kill Castro on December 1st, 1963, until I read a recent book by Lamar Waldron and Thom Hartmann called Ultimate Sacrifice. It was assumed that the Cuban Missile Crisis of '62 had sufficiently alarmed JFK and Castro's mentor Khrushchev so that they jointly backed down, putting an end, so everyone thought, to such dangerous adventures. JFK had pledged not to invade Cuba if Castro would allow inspections of any remaining missiles on the island. Since Castro did not cooperate, JFK then regarded his pledge as inoperative. In the spring of 1963, according to Ultimate Sacrifice, more a literal than an ironic title, John and Robert Kennedy started laying the groundwork for a coup against Fidel Castro that would eventually be set for what they called C-Day, December 1st, 1963. Bobby, like Nixon before him, was in charge of what would be the most secretive operation of its sort in our history. Since the CIA had, in the eyes of the Kennedys, botched the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion, the Department of Defense was to be in charge of this adventure, which would first engage mob hitmen to assassinate Castro and then replace Castro with a provisional government that would implore the United States to come to its aid and restore order. Ours is a society riddled with plots of every kind, from, let's say, one to bribe certain members of Congress to cheat Indians off of their casino money, to the financing, often secretly, of numerous presidential elections, while simultaneously great companies like Enron cheat customers, stockholders, and employees. Yet everyone who draws attention to all of this corruption is quickly denounced as a conspiracy theorist who means to undo the great fiction that anything truly wicked, at least in the murder line, must be the work of a solitary lone nut who is simply evil. Hence the setting up of Lee Harvey Oswald as the lone crazed killer of JFK, despite his own brief but presumably accurate statement after his Dallas arrest, "I'm the patsy." Then, as planned, his being gunned down by Jack Ruby, a fellow CIA asset. Oswald as lone killer for no reason at all, and addled Ruby, a one-time Chicago mobster who claimed to be deeply worried about the stress all this must be causing the widow Kennedy. And he goes on in chapter 55. Ultimate Sacrifice describes how the Kennedy C-Day plan was penetrated by three mafia godfathers: Carlos Marcello, New Orleans; Santo Trafficante, Tampa, Florida; and Johnny Roselli out of Chicago. All three were being vigorously pursued by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, along with a dozen of their associates, of whom 6 were also working on the Castro murder case. The crime bosses then used parts of the C-Plan, a.k.a. AM World, to arrange JFK's assassination in a way that would prevent a thorough government investigation, in order to protect the coup plan, its participants, as well as, naturally, national security by invoking the secrecy surrounding the C plan. The mob bosses targeted JFK twice before Dallas, once in Chicago on November 2nd, JFK called off his motorcade, and then in Tampa on November 18th. He survived unscathed. Ultimate Sacrifice reveals and details why Robert Kennedy later told several close associates the name of the godfather, Carlos Marcello, who had ordered his brother killed. But he couldn't do anything about it for fear the Soviets might go to war. Ironic and tragic action. I recalled when over the years I'd asked why what happened at Dallas happened, I'd answer, because Bobby had broken a truce made with the mob by Joe Kennedy in 1960. The book, Point-to-Point Navigation by Gore Vidal.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the second hour of our program. Scott Bessent and friends were meeting with the Chinese in Switzerland over the weekend, and they worked out a deal where I'm not sure you can call this a deal. It's the beginning of something, where our tariffs on Chinese goods coming into the United States are at 30%, which is still huge. I mean, keep in mind, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs in 1930 that exacerbated and prolonged the Great Depression, the Republican Great Depression, those Smoot-Hawley tariffs were around, as I recall, 34, 35%. They were in the 30s. And so now we've got this 30% tariff on Chinese goods, and China has a 10% tariff on U.S. goods. Again, this is stuff that should be being done by Congress. Nobody is going to build a factory based on a 145% tariff that Trump pulled out of his backside one day because he was pissed off. Nobody's going to build a factory based on a 30% tariff that came about as a result of an executive order. And by the way, these tariffs that Trump is claiming the power to impose, according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, only Congress has the right to establish what are called imposts, which was the word for tariffs back in 1787. Only Congress. Now, we did pass a law back in the either in the 40s or the 70s, I forget which, in the last century, which said that the president could impose tariffs during time of emergency, during time of economic emergency. But we are not in an emergency. You know, the pandemic is over. People are back to work. The stock market was doing great. Joe Biden handed over the best economy in the last 50 years to Donald Trump. Unemployment was low. Unemployment was at 1960s levels. Inflation was down to 2.5%. I mean, you know, this 2.6%. This is where, you know, Fed chairs have, you know, would have died for that over the last 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, everything was going really, really well when Donald Trump became president, and then he screwed it all up. So how's this gonna work out? Well, we'll see. I'm skeptical that there's going to be a happy ending to this. And as you know, those of you who are longtime listeners of this program, I am a fan of tariffs. I have been arguing for 30 years. I mean, I've been writing about this for 30 years. That you know, we need to use strategic, targeted, congressionally mandated tariffs to protect our domestic industries. And we need to do it based not on countries like Trump is doing, and not by executive order like Trump is doing, but we need to have Congress do it based on products. There are some products that we just don't want to manufacture here in the United States. There's no upside to it. So why tariff them? It doesn't make any sense. On the other hand, there are products that we really should be manufacturing here. We should be manufacturing our chips here. We should be manufacturing our strategic chemicals here. You know, the stuff that the precursors to pharmaceuticals. We should be manufacturing our pharmaceuticals here.
In reality, about 80% of our pharmaceuticals, the precursor chemicals are made in China. They ship them to India. In India, they turn them into drugs, and they ship them to us. Or they ship them to, Europe, where they get packaged by the European drug companies, and then they get shipped to us. So, let's keep an eye on this and see how it shakes out. The Wall Street is, happy. Well, I wouldn't say happy. They're relieved. And the Dow is almost back to where it was when Trump took office. We'll see. But, and in my opinion, this is probably the biggest pump and dump scheme that we've ever seen. I mean, I can just imagine, and again, this is my imagination. I don't have the evidence, and I don't think anybody does, and this is part of the problem. There needs to be an investigation by the Department of Justice, but there's no way that Kash Patel or Pam Bondi are going to have the FBI look into this. But I can just imagine Trump sitting around with his cabinet, his 13 or 14 billionaires in his cabinet, saying, next Tuesday I'm going to announce tariffs, and that's going to crash the stock market. So what you need to do right now is get out of the stock market and buy short positions, buy puts, and bet that the market's going to go down, and you will make a friggin' fortune. And then when the market was at its bottom at around 36,000, the Dow, I can imagine Trump sitting around going, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to loosen up these tariffs and we're going to go back to something closer to normal. So buy now, buy low. Buy low, sell high. It's how you make money in the stock market. Buy low right now. And there's no doubt in my mind that certainly the Trump family has been doing this. Although, again, I don't have the evidence to present to you, but these guys are grifters, and this is exactly what you would expect a grifter to do. Meanwhile, the mayor of Newark was arrested, Russ Baraka, was arrested and charged with trespassing at the Delaney Hall immigration detention facility. This is a roughly 1,000-bed facility in New Jersey. In Newark, New Jersey. He's the mayor of Newark. It opened in 2000 to house federal, state, and county detainees. It's owned by Geo Group, one of the private prison companies. From 2011 to 2017, ICE was using it to house people. And then it got shut down. And then it got opened back up again. In late February, Geo Group said that ICE had awarded it a 15-year, $1 billion contract to reopen the facilities. And here we are. So community and elected leaders, this is from the Washington Post, by the way, a piece by Toby Raji. Community and elected leaders have accused ICE and Geo Group of abuse and neglect of detainees. Charlene Walker of the multiracial interfaith group Faith in New Jersey said there's no evidence the owners had adequately fixed the dilapidated buildings sitting in the center of an area known as Chemical Corridor for its environmental pollution. Oh, isn't that sweet? Newark has sued the private prison company back in March in New Jersey Superior Court, saying that they don't have a valid certificate of occupancy. You got to go to the city to get a certificate of occupancy. And Viri Martinez, who is with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, says if they are doing this and assaulting Congress people in front of cameras and in front of the community, imagine what DHS is doing to violate the rights of immigrants who are held out of sight. Yeah, you think? Meanwhile, American popularity around the world is just collapsing in an absolutely shocking fashion. As Donald Trump is demonstrating how a democratic, small d democratic nation can be turned into a fascist republic, the world is watching. This Democracy Perception Index, the 2025 Democracy Perception Index, is put together every year. They canvassed more than 110,000 people in more than 100 countries. What do you think about America? What do you think about China? What do you think about Russia? What do you think about, fill in the blank? And we have just collapsed. I mean, China is more popular than the United States in most of the countries that they polled. It goes on to say Trump's reputation is in line with that of his country. The survey showed he's less popular worldwide than Putin or Xi Jinping. Trump recorded the worst score among a range of political, cultural, and spiritual leaders that includes ex-owner Elon Musk, Microsoft founder Bill Gates, late Pope Francis, Taylor Swift, and Kim Kardashian. He is liked less than any of them or hated more, depending on how you say it. This is just, another real tragedy brought to you by the Trump administration, that the world increasingly hates us and in some ways is afraid of us. I mean, we're the world's biggest bully, right? We have the world's largest military, the largest nuclear arsenal, the largest economy, the largest deployment of military forces around the world, over 700 foreign military bases. And now we're sliding into fascism. This has got a lot of people rightly concerned.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
15 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with your calls right after this. Stick around. 202-808-9925. And welcome back. Morris in Inglewood, California. Hey, Morris, what's on your mind today?
It's 9 o'clock, my radio, the Thom Hartmann Show. You know he sets common sense on fire. Hey, Tom, this is what I want to talk to you about. I know you know about private security services. Now, one of these days, ICE is going to run into somebody that's got a private security service, and they're not going to cooperate with just, put your hands behind your back. And then I'm anticipating that bad stuff, that bad idea, a shootout. They're going to get into a shootout one day. These guys are super arrogant. And I'm going to tell you why I believe it's going to come to pass. Again, in the 1950s, there was a guy named Robert Williams. He wrote a book called Negroes with Guns. Of course, the United States didn't appreciate him, so he had to run off to Havana. He was broadcasting from Havana. The NAACP didn't appreciate this guy, Robert Williams, who wrote a book called Negroes with Guns, because the NAACP felt that if you defend yourself, that's considered violence. Right?
Yeah.
So, I think things are going to have to be reevaluated coming in the future, and in terms of, can we fire on uniformed personnel or not? Depends on who they are. And so you were talking about you don't have no evidence to go to court with about what some Trump folks are doing. You may not have no evidence, Tom, but Letitia James might have some evidence. So, you got Ibrahim Traoré. Somebody invoked my name and associated with Ibrahim Traoré. He's not into that. What he's into is self-sovereignty for his country. He wants his country to be able to produce everything themselves that they need to survive. They no longer want Westerners coming in, these Western corporations. They do it all over the world. We ain't special. They no longer, in this case, the French. They don't want French corporations coming in there, extracting, their minerals, not giving them nothing. Since they kicked out the French, Tom, they're plus $300 billion a year income. Wow. They got a thing with free health care for everybody, free college education. I thought we was the richest people in the world. Okay, let me forget that part.
Yeah, and Burkina Faso used to be the poorest country in the world.
Tom, you ain't lying. Not only Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, all of them. But what they did was they kicked out the French. Now, wait a minute. Why did they wait till now to do it? Well, you had mentioned Russia. You mentioned Russia earlier. Well, what's happened is the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and Turkey are giving Burkina Faso coverage. So we can't go in there and do what we wanted to do. Now, you remember you were talking about AI. Now, I'm not going to go to court with this either. It might have been an AI production just to get you some ideas. Now, there was a thing where Ibrahim Traoré went to Russia to celebrate, the ending of World War II and the celebration and all that. And, of course, there were some U.S. jets that tried to intercept his flight. Okay, told him to, come down, drop your plane. And the Russians came in and told the U.S. guys to get up out of there. While that was going on, the Russians had 113 planes in the sky over Burkina Faso, just in case NATO, like they did in Libya, whoever, went and tried to do their thing. But because they got Russian coverage, because they got Chinese cover, because they can, they can stick their chests out. And they're not trying to go around the world to do anything. They're just trying to stop being exploited. And his thing of making Africa one united continent is working. It's working because these other African people, their people are rising up. ECOWAS, which used to be the tool that the Westerners used to manipulate what was going on in Africa with guys like General Michael Langley from the United States and all that. Well, that's coming to an end because people are rising up and seeing what you see, Tom. They're not as educated as you, but they're seeing what you see, Tom. That's why I said, you put common sense on fire. So, there's my that's my cue. But anyways, I appreciate this moment, Tom.
Yeah, good talking to you, Morris. And thanks for the information. Always good to hear from you. It'll be 20 minutes past the hour in just a few seconds. Stick around. I'll be back with you in 1 minute. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. You know, other countries enjoy benefits like free health care in college, modern mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs. They also have inexpensive internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out.
He said, I'll bring the factories back with promises bold and grand. But behind the scenes, the workers toil with no union to take a stand. Welcome to Trump's sweatshop nation, where the rich get richer still. The laborers break their backs each day, climbing a never-ending hill.
22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Joe in Oklahoma City. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Not much, Tom. Fantastic program. Love all your callers. They do such a great job. Just when you were talking about Trump's popularity overseas, and I just happened to be watching the House of Commons, the Prime Minister's questions, and one of the questions literally right there on live British TV was, what are you going to do to stand up to fascist Trump?
Whoa. And what did Keir Starmer have to say for himself?
It was just, of course he had to dodge and dance that one. But I mean, this is a live political question from our ally.
Yeah.
Britain was our big ally, and they're going, what are you going to do to stand up to fascist Trump? I was like, holy crap, they get it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, there was a hearing this week with Scott Besson, and they asked him if we've had trade deficits for 40 years, why is this suddenly an emergency? And he was just because they can't answer that. It's all lies.
Yeah, there is no economic emergency going on right now.
And I figured out why Trump hires the people from Fox News. He really hires the best liars.
Well, it goes beyond. It goes a little bit beyond that, Joe. Here's my take on this. Donald Trump. The one thing Donald Trump knows how to do is to be a showman, right? It's his superpower. He's been a showman since he was in his 20s, right? And decided that at 27, decided he was going to build in Manhattan. Pardon me, I'm sneezing.
So you're fine.
He's always been a showman, and he's really good at it. And he's a really competent liar. Now, it may be because he's a psychopath. It may be because he's a pathological liar. It might just be that he learned at an early age that this is how you get what you want. It doesn't really matter. The effect is the same. And I don't think that he understands how our government works. He's obviously never read the Constitution or the Declaration, never paid attention in civics class. But what he does know is if he does a show every day, just like the show that Mark Burnett taught him how to do with Celebrity Apprentice or with Apprentice, then people will go along with what he's saying. He's just doing a show. And if you're just doing a show, you want other showmen with you. And so, by the time somebody makes it to Fox News and gets $1 million a year salary from, being on-air talent, they have demonstrated their ability to be a show person, a showman or a showwoman. And that's what Trump is looking for. He's looking for people who can sit in front of the camera and, look right at it and lie to it or tell the truth. It doesn't matter, but do it in a way that's compelling. And he's got that. I mean, Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, these people are really good at this stuff.
Oh, and if they can't get past the question, they just do their own little personal filibuster.
Exactly.
So that, and it's all lies. I mean, that's the one thing you can count on from this admin is nothing but lies. But I will say, a couple of days ago on MSNBC, I always find a cringe moment on there. They had a guest on there that said, you can tell that really bothers Trump, all the senseless killing in Ukraine. I was like, are you kidding me? An estimated 20,000 infants and children have already died because of the cuts to U.S. aid from starvation, disease, etc. Trump doesn't care about anything but money
and himself.
And where's the religious right? Where's the outrage from the pro-lifers about him? These are proven deaths of children and infants because we cut off the help to those people. Trump could care. He values no human life other than his own, and that's a fact.
Yeah, I completely agree. Which raises the question, why doesn't the media report on Trump more accurately? That he's a BS artist, that he's just doing a show, that his song and dance this morning about drug prices was really an effort to get us not to talk about the Republicans passing out of committee a $700 and some odd $1 billion cut to Medicaid. I mean, why?
I think to some degree, and this goes to the problems with the left media in general, like the way they go after progressives versus establishment.
What left media?
They do have a certain corporate control over them as well.
And they don't want to piss off Trump, and they don't want to get sued, and they're afraid of him. And that means that his fascist actions are actually succeeding. Joe, thank you for the call. Spot on. 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of this break here at the bottom of the hour. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're right here.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is Amazon a person? And we dare to say, no. The Supreme Court got that one wrong, too. Book Club is by Alan J. Lichtman, and it's titled Repeal the Second Amendment, The Case for a Safer America. This from the introduction, titled A Book That Must Be Written. On April 28, 1996, 28-year-old Martin Bryant stopped at an inn near his home of Newtown in Tasmania, Australia, and shot to death its two owners. He then drove to the former penal colony and tourist attraction of Port Arthur, where he lunched at a cafe. After eating, Bryant pulled from his sports bag a semi-automatic rifle with a 30-round magazine that he had legally purchased through a newspaper ad. With no provocation, he began firing at patrons in the cafe and its gift shop. Before the police stopped his shooting spree, Bryant had murdered 35 and wounded 18 others. His motive remains unknown. There were people everywhere, bodies, said witness Lynn Beavis. I thought at the time, being a nurse, I've seen dead people, I've seen blood, I've seen things like this, but what I saw in there, nobody but perhaps a soldier would know what that was like. The leadership of a shocked nation responded to the Port Arthur massacre, not with thoughts and prayers, but with decisive action. The country's conservative-led government rebuffed their gun lobby and its American ally, the NRA, to adopt comprehensive national gun controls. In a 2015 broadside labeled Australia, There Will Be Blood, the NRA charged that those regulations, which Australia significantly tightened as of 2002, have, quote, robbed Australians of their right to self-defense and empowered criminals. If the NRA was right, America, with its lax control over firearms for alleged self-defense, should be one of the world's safest countries, certainly far safer than Australia, where criminals presumably evade gun controls to prey on defenseless, law-abiding citizens. Yet in the latest reporting year, gun homicides claimed 14,542 American lives. compared to 27 in Australia. And all homicides took 19,510 American lives compared to 222 in Australia. Since the NRA issued its warning, firearm homicides have declined in Australia, while soaring by 3,534 in the U.S. An American is now over 30 times more likely per capita than an Australian to be murdered by a gun, and 7 times more likely to be murdered by any means. If we had rates comparable today to Australia's, some 14,000 American lives would have been saved from firearm homicides in 2017 alone. By the gun lobby's twisted logic, Japan, which has one of the world's strictest gun control laws, should be drenched in innocent blood. Yet out of a population of 127 million, shooters in Japan murdered only 3 persons and injured only 5 in firearm assaults throughout 2017. Australia and Japan are not outliers. As compared to residents of our closest peer democracies in the G7 group of nations plus Australia, an American in 2017 was over 20 times more likely to die from a gun homicide. The gun lobby would have you forget that gun deaths are not limited to murders. In 2017, 23,854 Americans died from gun suicides, 64% more than were killed in firearm homicides. As compared to the peer nations, the 2017 per capita rate of firearm suicides in the United States was 7 times higher, while the rate of suicides by other means was 40% lower. These other democracies all have strict firearm regulations. None has a constitutional right to keep or bear arms, a distinction the United States shares worldwide only with Guatemala, whose gun murder rate is the 3rd highest of some 195 nations worldwide. Why has America lagged behind the democratic world in protecting its citizens from needless death and injury? The culprit is not spending by the NRA on campaigns and lobbying, which other pressure groups exceeded. The real problem is that which gun control advocates fear to name, the Second Amendment. Led by the NRA, the gun lobby exploits a historically defective, perverse reinvention of this amendment to inspire their grassroots supporters, sell guns, and provide constitutional cover for their opposition to making us safer by regulating firearms. The competing movement for gun control has floundered in response to the gun lobby's triumphant marketing of the Second Amendment. Gun control advocates have righteous zeal and noble motives, but lack a winning strategy. Instead of forthrightly refuting the lobby's bogus claims, the gun control movement has instead fallen into the trap of lamely insisting, we support the Second Amendment, but we also support responsible gun control. With such a self-defeating strategy, the movement can never win. It plays on the gun lobby's home turf and fails to rally the American majority that favors stricter firearms regulations. It provokes only scorn from a gun lobby that dismisses yes but assurances as rank hypocrisy, and it ignores the clear history and the true meaning of the Second Amendment itself. The movement for gun control must strike hard with a new strategy. Repeal of the Second Amendment is not only right, but realistic. It would break open the political logjam and open a path for the comprehensive national gun control and safety measures that have eluded the American people for so long. None of these measures would confiscate.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
So what do we call the really, really mind-bogglingly rich? You know, at the founding of the Republic, they were referred to as speculators or moneyed interest or aristocrats. In the years leading up to the Civil War, we called them the cotton lords and the plantation aristocracy. In the late 19th century, they were the robber barons. In the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. But since the Reagan Revolution, we've just called them billionaires. And now, you know, some of them want to call themselves tech bros. Like, that's kind of a good thing, you know, like tech is positive and bros, you know, like Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in American business culture. So we need a new phrase. I would like to suggest the morbidly rich. Morbidly suggests unhealthy. And the vast riches that some of these people have is unhealthy to our democracy, particularly since 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court said that morbidly rich people can buy politicians. And it's unhealthy for them, too. So morbidly rich. There's an op-ed over at HartmannReport.com all about it. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. JT in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, JT, what's up?
Hey, the other day, I think it was Friday, you had a clip. I watched it over the weekend about James O'Keefe's story on Pat Bondi.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring to your attention that on the 5th of February this year is when she was sworn in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on that very same date that James O'Keefe announced that they had dismissed, the DOJ had dismissed his Ashley Biden case and returned a few days later his equipment that was seized during that raid.
Oh, really?
Now, yeah, it's very important to understand that he may actually be trying to pressure Pat Bondi around those Epstein files and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I believe that there's also an attempt for him to try to make himself look like an objective journalist.
Yeah, he's been trying that for years. It doesn't work.
No. But I just thought it was important. You can look on OMG. You can see that it was on the 5th of February.
Yeah.
And there's actually 2 clips up surrounding the release of his information and then the ultimate dismissal of the case.
Interesting.
So, you know, they're both in the conservative movement, and I think they're pretty intimate. I don't know if there's a direct connection, but I know that they're all pretty much kind of coordinating together in a certain way. And maybe they coach each other a little bit, and they also ref each other a little bit.
Interesting. You know, she also authored the paper saying that Trump can take this $400 million jet and it doesn't violate the emoluments clause because they're going to launder it through the Pentagon. But Trump is going to end up with it after he leaves office, or at least his foundation will, which means Trump gets to use it all the time, right? And or at least his family does. You know, I mean, he'll be in his 80s. But what was not generally known is that Pam Bondi was making $115,000 a month from the government of Qatar as a lobbyist for them before Trump hired her to be Attorney General. And that's, you know, so and Qatar, of course, is who's giving him the plane. So it's pretty wild stuff. JT, thanks for the call. Good to hear from you. Steve in New Boston, Michigan. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Tom, got another question for you.
Okay.
And part of this probably should be run by Greg Palast tonight because he's been championing part of this. But the question today is in regards to the Save the Vote Act, which has already passed the Republican House and is on its way to the Republican-controlled Senate, where it probably will pass there, too. Well, once that goes through, then that means every person who does vote must be a legitimate U.S. citizen to be able to vote. And if that's true, and that's how it works, then we don't have to have voter suppression anymore through voter challenges. Is that correct?
No. I mean, they'll still do the voter challenges. They'll still do the voter suppression. They'll still do all those things. And this is just more of that, actually. This is bringing voter suppression to the blue states. I mean, here's the goal. The people who are least likely to have ID are and particularly under the SAVE Act, ID that reflects their birth name, are women who got married and changed their names. And by and large, black people who are living in poverty, and also Hispanics living in poverty, basically poor people. And those 3 groups are largely Democratic constituencies. So what
we
I'm
never
hearing,
win an election again.
let me just finish this sentence. What I'm hearing from Republicans is that they think that the SAVE Act will actually flip blue states red. That enough black people, Hispanic people, and married women will not be able to register to vote in blue states, that and enough white men will, that those several blue states, I mean, they're dreaming about flipping California red. That's why they want to do this at the federal level.
So in all things, we never win again. Then the Republicans will always win.
That's the point.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
Well, we have to fight it. I mean, it's members of Congress are fighting it. I get it that in all probability it will pass the Senate. It did pass the House, and Trump probably will sign it. It will immediately be challenged in court. But, my guess is that the Supreme Court will probably uphold it, given, their Shelby County decision and some of their other voting rights, their Husted v. U.S. Decision. It's just, sadly, we don't have a right to vote in the United States.
Greg Palast proved that. He said what was going to happen in the last election, and what he said came true. Donald Trump won, and he won it through voter suppression.
That's correct.
That's what won it.
That's correct. And
so if we don't stop it, then we never win again. Like the Republicans said, well, if we get rid of the Electoral College, we'll never win another election again because the majority of people aren't going to vote Republican.
Yeah.
But now these Republicans control what they're doing, and that the Democrats will never win an election again.
No, yeah, they suppressed over 4 million votes in the last election, and that doesn't count all the people who got bounced off the voting rolls before the election, and which is something on the order of around 10 million. And this time it'll be even worse, particularly with the SAVE Act. I'm with you, Steve. I don't have a solution for this. I'm sorry. This is. I
posted on your show there on the written part. I posted that George Washington said, "In times of peace, prepare for war." And when Joe Biden won that election, Republicans did exactly that. They prepared for war, and they were ready in 2024, and they stole the elections from us. And they're going to do it again in 2026 and 2028, and basically we're just all screwed.
Well, I'm not willing to give up that easily, Steve, and I do believe that there's an enormous backlash right now that's going to push back on this. The question is whether we can recover the structural pieces of the electoral system in the United States. Steve, thanks for the call. Brian in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hey, so much, but we'll pick one thing. Before I say, I'll say it's rhetorical, my question. I know your answer is going to be, well, because MAGA is a cult and they believe anything. But about the tariffs, the market's up huge today. I'd love it if Larry called in later. But the markets are up huge today so far, but it's because Trump failed, not because he succeeded. Now, you already pointed that out, but my main point is the MAGA faithful was cheering Trump because he said tariffs are necessary to bring manufacturing and factories back to America. Not even if people were saying, "Oh, it's a negotiating tactic and he's just bullying," the faithful, largely have nothing or little in the market. They were cheering because the lie of the things of jobs coming back.
Yeah.
So, but why are they not lambasting him now and all turning on him for now saying, "Oh, I got a good deal." But China's going to keep making. I mean, he didn't get a good deal, but China's going to keep making stuff, and we're going to keep buying it from them. That's not what the MAGA faithful claimed they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty bizarre, Brian. It's pretty bizarre. It's like up is down and down is up. Brian, thanks for the call. Well said. Alfredo in Mountain View. Hey, Alfredo, what's up? Alfredo? In Mountain View? You're usually right there, Alfredo. Is your phone muted? Alfredo just hung up. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I would like everyone, in the sound of my voice, moving forward, do not call these occupants in the White House an administration, because they are not.
I call them a regime.
I call it an organized crime. They are a criminal terrorist organization, and their behavior add to their defiance of lawful court orders. They don't want to comply with the orders, regarding bringing Mr. Garcia back. They're turning around and attacking protesters, peaceful protesters. They're attacking a judge. They attack Mayor Ras Baraka because of their speaking against them and putting them in check with what the real law, what the real Constitution is. And then we just now have a new pope that is also speaking out against Trump and Vance. So what are they going to do now? Want to go after the pope? Are you freaking kidding me? And then look at this ICE thing. And then,
they will. They went after the last pope.
But see, look at this ICE now. They're running around, no badges, no nameplates, just a stupid
with
ice
masks
word
over their
act on
faces.
them.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're part of the Proud Boys or something. I mean, it's weird.
That's what I said. Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or the insurrections, they look like ISIS.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you got to ask, ICE or ISIS?
Good question, Michael. Thank you very much. Our own homegrown terrorists. 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where despair is not an option. I'll be right back with your calls. Welcome back. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's up?
Yeah, this conversation is very interesting because it's sad but true. We are now officially an authoritarian regime, and I would call them the SS, the ICE people. They're not, they don't have the, insignia and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it is absolutely pathetic, and I don't want to take too much time because I wanted to talk about the Patriot Act. We've been slow walking into authoritarianism, since the Patriot Act because people rounded up on the basis of their speech. They didn't donate money to terrorists. They just had said what the FBI considered terroristic speech. And they went across the whole country in this city. I think it was Milwaukee, Detroit, New York. And they literally just, showed up at people's doors. And although they had a warrant and they took their computers and everything else. And, we haven't really heard very much about what happened. I think all of these people were acquitted or, they were released. But they took all their stuff and dumped it out in front of their house, rifled through all of their papers and looked into their computers and things like that. And so, Fox News, the Republican Party, they have prepared us for this. And just think how crazy it would have been if in my father's generation, like in the 60s, if Franco came to lecture the Republican Party like Viktor Orban did.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's
to
wild.
me,
what's amazing to me, John, is that when Orban was here 2 years ago at CPAC telling everybody, create your own media, do what I did, here's the model, that the media did not cover it in a way that appropriately, honestly characterized what's happening in Hungary.
Right. And, you often talk about free speech TV, and you're on free speech TV, and I think you talked about it. Amy Goodman definitely talked about it. I don't even listen to, regular media because I'm not a media person like yourself, and I don't, I see some of it, stories online, but she covered it in quite a bit of detail, how outrageous that was. And I knew right then and there, if the Democrats didn't win, which they didn't, that this is what was going to happen. This is, it's Viktor Orban and Project 2025, which they denied. Oh, no, we're not going to go there. And, this is what they're doing. So I think what governors should do and mayors and judges, they should be protected by our own police, like here in Minnesota. I think that our governor should, any judge...
Did you see the story about the pizzas, John?
I heard about that, yes.
These judges who have ruled against Trump are getting pizzas delivered to their houses and to the houses of their children and other relatives. And this is the right-wing terrorists' way of saying, we know where you live. It's got a lot of judges
really terrified. Where you live. And one judge, her son was murdered.
Yep.
And they were ordering pizzas in his name. That's just...
Yeah. That's how just horrible, how evil these people are. John, thank you for the call. It's just about 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back, 10 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Beachside Bill in Orlando, Florida. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Afternoon, Tom. Hope everybody's well on this Monday, and it's been a while, so I'll be quick. I got two quick things. The Republicans are obsessed with renaming the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America. I think they should name it Gulf of Pollution because it's one of the most polluted bodies of water on Earth, you know? And I can't find the exact number, but I know it's like number 2 or 3, really. Like after the Deepwater explosion, all that oil, and there's many uncapped oil wells out there that are still leaking.
Yeah.
I kind of Googled it a while back. You know, it's that polluted, and that's because of big oil and, you know, and the greed of these people, you know. And I had a quick story. I donated last Thursday. I donated my 156 gallon of blood.
Wow!
And I was watching the Pope. You know, that day I'm on my way to 160 by the end of the year. So I'm watching the Pope the Pope being selected, and I was sitting up there. I was watching the birds sitting up there. You know, the seagulls and the pigeons. You know, I was going on. They're getting high off the smoke because they were all flapping their wings and stuff like that. And I thought, well, they got to go to the bathroom somewhere too. So I've kind of learned that out in the blood bank because I'm just kind of fascinated with the whole thing. So those are my 2 quick points. But it's nice to talk to you again and all that, Tom.
Well, thank you, Bill.
What do you think?
About
what do you think?
About what?
About the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh,
the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, well, you know, Congress has actually, I'm not sure if it's passed the House yet or not. Did it pass the House, this bill to change the name officially?
I think they're on their way to it. I know they were fiddling with it.
Yeah,
they were fiddling around with it.
They might have passed it last week, but it's got to go to the Senate, then it goes to the president, and then, you know, but I mean, who cares, right? I mean,
yeah.
This is called bread and circus. This is, you know, you keep the people occupied and you keep them fat and happy, and then you can just steal whatever you want. You can do whatever crazy stuff you want, and that's what Trump is up to. Bill,
the state of Florida. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, finish your thought.
I'm sorry.
And then I got to move on.
The state of Florida is going to consider. They already passed a bill. I think it's already on the way to DeSantis' desk, I believe, or this week it will, because they have to go back for a budget and all that. So, the state of Florida is already, you know, they're going to put it into law. Whatever the state of Florida has to say in it. Yeah, the Gulf of America. Yes, that's you know, they in line with Trump.
Oh,
you know, in line with
Emperor
Trump. And
Trump, all hail Emperor Trump. Let us bow down and kiss
That's
your
what
butt.
it is.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I got to move along, Bill. Thanks a lot for the call. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. Hey, Alfredo, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Thank you. I apologize for hanging up a mistake.
Oh, all good.
Yeah. So regarding Trump attempting to suspend habeas corpus, I have no doubt that Trump will try to suspend the Constitution as well to state precedent. The GOP has completely relegated its power to these men, which is unconstitutional. But I wanted to hear your thoughts about Trump trying to stay in power by suspending the Constitution and perhaps deploying the military to, you know, create chaos and stay in power. And I take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Yeah, my guess is, Alfredo, that you know, he's starting to look a little pockmarked. He's starting to look a little. I mean, you know, age is starting to show. He's also lost a lot of weight. I'm assuming that's because he's, you know, taking Ozempic or one of these drugs that, you know, these GLP-1 drugs. But I don't think he's going to be running for re-election or trying to hold on to power in 3.5 years. You know, he'll be 82 years old or 83 years old, and I'm very skeptical. I am far more concerned about what he's going to do when the protests hit some sort of a critical threshold, when enough Americans are in the streets, when people really start pushing back. In particular, if there are any efforts at passive resistance and active steps to gum up the works. That's the point at which he brings out the military. I'm far more concerned about that. Kathy in Lindenwold, New Jersey. Hey, Kathy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. It's about SAVE Act. Try to make this short. 48 years ago, when my husband and I got married in Virginia, they misspelled our last name. And we thought 35 years ago we had corrected it when we went to Virginia. We had gotten a new certificate. Well, 10 years ago, lost my house to a fire. And recently, when I went for my real ID, I was denied it because my last name came back misspelled from the new certificate I had to get.
Oh, my.
And I was a school bus driver for 35 years. I now no longer have CDL. They took my CDL.
What's
my husband
CDL?
died a year and a half ago. I was a school bus driver, commercial driver's license.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they basically I've tried to straighten this out with Virginia. Letters, phone calls, and pay all this money, get a certificate, names misspelled. Apparently, when they went to the computer, they took it from the original license, which was misspelled.
Wow.
And I cannot tell you the BS I've been going through. As a result of this, my husband's now dead. I'm living on Social Security. Not so good. Want to go back to work, but unfortunately, I can't drive a school bus because now I have to try to get my name fixed, and then I have to retake all of the tests.
Oh, my goodness.
I have to go through everything like I'm a rookie.
All because
Main reason I'm
Republicans
calling
want to make it harder for people to vote.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm angry, because I am very left-wing.
Yeah.
And I am not going to let them take away my right to vote. It's bad enough they took my right to work.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like they already have. I wish you the best of luck
Yes,
with this,
well,
Kathy. Keep us up to date on how it works
I know,
out,
but
okay?
I'd like all the women out there to check their records and make sure it's correct, or you're not going to be able to vote either.
There you go. Kathy, thank you. Thanks for that cautionary warning. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back!
For the Thom Hartmann Book Club today, it's Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power by Pam Grossman. This is from the introduction. Witches have always walked among us, populating societies and storyscapes across the globe for thousands of years. From Circe to Hermione, from Morgan Le Fay to Marie Laveau, the witch has long existed in the tales we tell about ladies with strange powers who can harm or heal. And although people of all genders have been considered witches, it's a word that is now usually associated with women. Throughout most of history, she has someone to fear, an uncanny other who threatens our safety or manipulates reality for her own mercurial purposes. She's a pariah, a persona non grata, a boogie woman to defeat and discard. Although she's often been deemed a destructive entity, in actuality, a witchy woman has historically been far more susceptible to attack than an inflictor of violence herself. As with other terrifying outsiders, she occupies a paradoxical role in cultural consciousness as both vicious aggressor and vulnerable prey. Over the past 150 years or so, however, the witch has done another magic trick by turning from a fright into a figure of inspiration. She is now as likely to be the heroine of your favorite TV show as she is its villain. She might show up in the form of your Wiccan co-worker or the beloved musician who gives off a sorceress vibe in videos or on stage. There's also a chance that she is you, and that witch is an identity you've taken upon yourself for any number of reasons, heartfelt or flippant, public or private. Today, more women than ever are choosing the way of the witch, whether literally or symbolically. They're floating down catwalks and sidewalks in gauzy black clothing and adorning themselves with Pinterest-worthy pentagrams and crystals. They're filling up movie theaters to watch witchy films and gathering in back rooms and backyards to do rituals, consult tarot cards, and set life-altering intentions. They're marching in the streets with Hex the Patriarchy placards and casting spells each month to try to constrain the commander-in-chief. Year after year, articles keep proclaiming it's the season of the witch, as journalists try to wrap their heads around the mushrooming witch trend. And all of this begs the question, why? Why do witches matter? Why are they seemingly everywhere right now? What exactly are they? And why the hell won't they go away? I get asked such things over and over, and you would think that after a lifetime of studying and writing about witches, as well as hosting a witch-themed podcast and being a practitioner of witchcraft myself, my answers would be succinct. In fact, I find that the more I work with the witch, the more complex she becomes. Hers is a slippery spirit. Try to pin her down and she'll only recede further into the dark, deep wood. I do know this for sure, though. Show me your witches, and I'll show you your feelings about women. The fact that the resurgence of feminism and the popularity of the witch are ascending at the same time is no coincidence. The two are reflections of each other. That said, this current witch wave is nothing new. I was a teen in the 1990s, the decade that brought us such pop culture as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charmed, and The Craft. Not to mention riot girls and third-wave feminists who taught me that female power could come in a variety of colors and sexualities. I learned that women could lead a revolution while wearing lipstick and combat boots, and sometimes even a cloak. But my own witchly awakening came at an even earlier age. Morganville, New Jersey, where I was raised, was a solidly suburban town, but it retained enough natural land features back then to still feel a little bit scruffy in spots. We had a small patch of woods in our backyard that abutted a horse farm, and the two were separated by a wisp of running water that we could cross via a plank of wood. When we were little, my older sister Emily and I would sometimes venture to the other side where we could feed the horses, an act that still scares me to this day, and pick fistfuls of clover. But the majority of our time was spent on our side of the stream, threading ourselves through the thicket of trees that served as our personal forest. In one corner of the yard, a giant puddle would form whenever it rained, surrounded by a border of ferns. We called this spot our magical place. That it would vanish and then reappear only added to its mystery. It was a portal to the unknown. These woods are where I first remember doing magic, entering that state of deep play where imaginative action becomes reality. I would spend hours out there creating rituals with rocks and sticks, drawing secret symbols in the dirt, losing all track of time. It was a space that felt holy and wild, yet still strangely safe. As we age, we're supposed to stop filling our heads with such nonsense. Unicorns are to be traded in for Barbie dolls, though they're mythical creatures to be sure. We lose our tooth fairies, walk away from our wizards. Dragons get slain on the altar of our youth. Most kids grow out of their magic phase. I grew further into mine. My grandma Trudy was a librarian at the West Long Branch Library, which meant I got to spend many a long afternoon lurking between the 001.9 and 135 Dewey Decimal sections, reading about Bigfoot and dream interpretation in Nostradamus. Waking the Witch by Pam Grossman. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Treason and Betrayal, The Rise and Fall of Individual One by Kenneth Ford McCallion. This is from the prologue. Our automation system appears to have crashed, so sorry there was no music there. In fact, there was a little dead air before it. My apologies to our affiliates, computers and all that, right? So anyhow, welcome to the third hour of our program. Senator Chris Murphy has just come out with a statement about Donald Trump's trip to the Middle East that he's going to be taking in a day or two. And this is, I think, one of the clearest explications of what's going on that I've seen anywhere. So I'm just going to quote it verbatim. He says, "This is President Trump's corruption tour of the Middle East. He's going to the Gulf in order to collect tribute. What's happening is an extraordinary level of corruption. We shouldn't pretend this is business as usual. What the president is doing is giving countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE what they want. It's a civilian nuclear deal with the United States for the UAE. It is taking some of the restrictions off the way that semiconductors flow into that country. And in exchange, Trump is not asking for any benefit for the American people. He's not asking for any movement toward peace in the region. He's asking for cash. He's asking for cash payments. UAE is giving him that through this deal in cryptocurrency, in which they're doing a big deal through Trump Crypto. And of course, we just found out this weekend that Qatar is going to be giving Donald Trump a plane, apparently personally. So that's the story of this trip on Iran. I mean, listen, I obviously want a diplomatic agreement with Iran, but what tragedy it would be if the result of these negotiations is to move from where it is today, a handful of weeks away from a nuclear weapon, if it wanted to a year when the stated objective is a deal that, Trump negotiated. So anyhow, what Chris Murphy is pointing out, and I mean, Laura Loomer pointing out, for God's sake, this is some kind of a scam that's going on. This Donald Trump is taking a $400 million plane from Qatar and a 747-8 jumbo jet, the biggest jumbo jets out there, or maybe it's the second biggest now with that big Airbus plane. And Laura Loomer, by the way, Pam Bondi, who is the Attorney General for the United States, the former Florida Attorney General, didn't apparently disclose to Congress. I've read this in two different places, but I haven't verified it. So, subject this to fact checking. But it appears that she did not tell Congress that she was making $115,000 a month as a lobbyist for Qatar. Qatar, who is giving Trump the $400 million plane. Qatar, who has given over $1 billion to Hamas. Qatar, which is where Hamas is located, right? It's their central, kind of headquarters is in Qatar. And this has got some of the people around Trump rather flipped out. And as I mentioned, Laura Loomer is at the top of that list. This is what she posted on Twitter the other day. She said, "I have to call a spade a spade. We cannot accept a $400 million gift from jihadists in suits. Qatar funds the same Iranian proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah who have murdered U.S. service members, the same proxies who have worked with the Mexican cartels to get jihadists across our border. This is really going to be such a stain on the administration if this is true, and I say that as someone who would take a bullet for Trump. I'm so disappointed. Mark Levin, who is, for years and years was a talk show host. Now I believe he still has his talk show, but he's also on Fox News. He's a Fox News host. Mark Levin came out on Sunday and said, and I quote, "Qatar must stop buying our colleges and universities and spreading their anti-American, Jew-hating propaganda and funding terrorist groups and front groups. Their jet and all the other things they are buying in our country does not provide them with the cover they seek. It is a terror state that is beyond dispute, or their bank accounts." Mark Levin. These are right-wingers. These are as far to the right as you can get. Now, what is Trump getting out of this? Why would he want to embrace a country that, is like one of the big funders of Hamas, one of the big funders of Iran, one of the big supporters of Iran? Well, the Trump family struck a deal Wednesday to build a luxury golf resort in Qatar. Yeah, this was just, a couple days ago. Trump branded beachside villas, an 18-hole golf course to be built by a Saudi Arabian country. Noah Bookbinder, who is the president of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, he said, "You want a president making decisions that are in the best interest of the United States, not his personal bottom line." By the way, this new Trump property, this $2 billion Qatar Trump property, is going to be developed by a Qatari company called Qatari Dayar, which is owned by the Qatari government. Now, Trump, when he issued his ethics statement when he became president for a second time, said that he would not pursue foreign deals that include foreign governments, Trump properties. And yet, this one involves the government of Saudi Arabia and the government of Qatar. So, so much for Donald Trump telling the truth, right? All right. So what's on your mind today? Let's pick up some calls here. Carolyn in Chester, Pennsylvania. Hey, Carolyn, what's up?
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm fine. Well, I'm kind of bummed out. My cat died this morning, but other than that, I'm fine.
Don't bring me down, Tom. I was in a great high. This is my first time calling, so I'm kind of excited that I got through.
Well, thank you. Glad you made it.
Yeah, my subject is what you were saying about AI. I totally agree how it's going to infiltrate our voting systems, but I wanted to be like a fly in the ointment and say a lot of this is due to our lackadaisical way of checking the facts for ourselves. We've gotten so used to just being told what is true instead of finding out. Now that we need to find out, what we find out isn't really worth finding because AI may have obfuscated those venues, and now trying to get to the truth is going to be even more harder.
Yeah, that's a good point. And AI is not, some ultimate arbiter of what's true and, what works and what doesn't work and all that kind of stuff. The AI just regurgitates what it was trained on. So if you've got an AI like Grok over on X that is being trained on X content where you've got, huge numbers of Nazis and neo-Nazis, spreading lies and propaganda, that AI is going to be pretty badly polluted. Garbage out,
but you know what?
Garbage out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but you know what? It can be a great tool used correctly. How many times have things been developed for a good reason and then someone manipulates it to do something not so good?
Yeah.
But we can master this and make it something great for us.
Yeah. Well, it's an old story. And as I said earlier, I use AI for research now. But I always have to double check, I'll ask one of these AI programs, for some information about something, and it'll give me some links. And then I have to click on the links and actually read the articles and see. Of course, you do that with just Google itself, with just, Google or DuckDuckGo, your basic search engines. But I think the
that's
whole...
a dying art.
Yeah.
reading something, reading material. That's a dying art, you know.
There you go,
but I think it's something we need to bring back up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Excellent point. Carolyn, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you made it through. Thank you. Yeah. It's 14 and a half minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Speaking the truth, the multinational corporations would really rather you didn't know. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Rick in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Oh, Tom, I could talk for days, but thank you for taking my call. I have listened to you for years, and I listen and read broadly from thinkers that are both progressive and conservative. And I stumbled across an article by George O'Neill from the American Conservative that outlines the illusion of American generosity and how we have spread the myth of the good superpower, but our empire has been enormously destructive. And I have followed these issues as well as probably dozens of others. I think there was a certain point in time that not only are we causing all this destruction and chaos internationally, those same powers have turned on the American people. So if you would look that up and read it, I think it's worthy of being in the Daily Stack.
Well, Sue will no doubt track it down and put it in there. I'm not familiar with it, Rick, but the essence of it was that that we've created these systems.
Despite the mythology of the good superpower, the American empire has been enormously destructive.
How?
How? Well, it goes down. You look at a lot of things that have occurred, but the CIA involvement in Latin and Central America, all of the starting the jihadist movement in '79 with the Carter administration and the Taliban.
That was actually Reagan.
I think if you look back,
I'm thinking Reagan funded bin Laden. That's right. Never mind. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So all the disasters in the Middle East. We have
Central America
troops garrisoned across the world. 700.
Okay. All right, you've made your case, Rick. You've made your case. I'll have to check it out. Rick, thank you. Thanks for the call and for the heads up. I appreciate it. Carol in Spirit Lake, Iowa. Hey, Carol, what's on your mind today?
Oh, yeah, glad to talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with a short joke.
Okay.
I'm just glad it's not the Gulf of Trump.
Yeah, I'll bet he was tempted.
Oh, he was. But what I want to talk about is his acceptance of a gift from Qatar.
Yeah.
Of an Air Force One. I mean, not only is it illegal in every way, but it seems like it's kind of a Trojan horse.
Well, there are concerns coming out of the Pentagon that this plane may be stuffed full of listening devices, and the only way they'll ever figure it out is if they literally rip everything apart. I mean, they could be in the couches, They could be in the chairs, they could be in the ceilings. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would go directly back to Qatar or whoever wants
or the Saudis,
it. So that just has been bothering me since I heard this. I try not to watch too much news anymore. Because it bothers me,
Cutter
but
said,
I do listen to you.
We have this wonderful big horse, Mr. Trump, and we'd like to wheel it into the White House.
Maybe it will be a golden horse. I don't know.
Exactly. Well, I think this plane is a Trojan horse. I really do. Carol, thank you for the call. Apparently, they flew it down to Mar-a-Lago a couple months ago, and Trump took a tour of it and was impressed and oohed and ahhed. This was in February. And so they said, oh, well, you like it a lot, huh? Well, we'll give it to you. 19 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
Stormtroopers at the courthouse, boots heavy on the floor, dragging freedom by the ankles, smashing down the people's door. No law, no warrant, just the silence of the bought. This is how a nation crumbles, not with battles, but with fear they taught. The gavel's been replaced with guns, the bench is just a stage, and every whisper of dissent is locked inside a cage. Raise your voice before it's broken. Stand your ground before it's taken. They're tearing down the dream our father swore to save. Stormtroopers at the courthouse, do you hear democracy's grave?
21 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. What's on your mind today? Ron in Long Island, New York. Hey, Ron, what's up?
Oh, hello, Tom. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I was triggered by a film clip on CNN or one of the stations last night or the night before. I think it was Scott Besson, and he basically was crying that the United States corporations were victimized, and that's what resulted in all these companies offshoring to China and other countries many years ago. And what triggered me was I retired as a conductor on the railroad, and one night on a very not crowded train, there was a man on there. I took his ticket, and he said to me, "Oh, it's good to be back in the United States." And instead of just saying "good for you" and keep going, I said, "What do you mean? Where were you?" He says, I live in China right now temporarily in a compound that's populated by other Americans. He said, and our job is to bring factories and other companies to China and set them up in China and offshore them from the United States." Wow. And I looked at him like, I would never admit that if I was him. I mean, he actually said that to me. And I'm a union guy, a blue-collar guy. I grew up in a poor family, in Brooklyn and all that. And I'm very sensitive to things that affect working people. And I was thinking to myself, why would you be proud of something like that? But the point is that here's Scott Besson, I believe it was him, who was crying about somehow, some way that they had nothing to do with. These companies were offshored to China. Well, we all know they got tax breaks. They got incentives for doing that back in the 80s and 90s.
Yep. Yeah. And in fact, all those costs associated with offshoring a factory are tax deductible. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Ron. And they shouldn't be. I mean, if we didn't want that to happen, we should have passed legislation to stop it. Ron, spot on. Thanks for...
Sometime I'll...
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Well, sometime I'll call you back and relate an incident that happened to me when I was on vacation. I ran into one of these people who I feel was wounded or victimized by this very fact that these companies were offshore. He had a good job. I can't talk to you now about it, but I'll call you back. It just shows that, these actions have consequences, and they're not always good. They ruin families.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
ruin lives.
No, it's very true. Ron, thank you very much. Sharon in Arlington, Texas. Hey, Sharon, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to tell you that I'm so glad to have you back. I'm thinking almost 2 years. I have not been able to get you on direct TV in our area.
Oh, really?
I always could get right-wing TV, but I couldn't get free speech TV. It always would say satellite problem, or it just never would come through, and just all of a sudden you're back.
Oh, is that strange? Huh.
It's very strange.
If that happens again, would you reach out to the folks at Free Speech TV and let them know about it?
Okay, sure. I also wanted to let you know that I really am enjoying your music. And also, I wanted to know, with all your books that you've written, have you written an autobiography?
Sorta. I wrote a book about kind of my spiritual journey back 20 some odd years ago. It's called The Prophet's Way, which is the name of a path in the forest in Germany. And it's really the story of my mentor, a man named Gottfried Mueller. But it doesn't talk about my political stuff, and it doesn't, that's about it. So.
You just live such an interesting life. I'd not like to know more about.
It's got a lot of stories,
path.
of visiting, Uganda and Colombia and Russia and traveling around the world doing international relief work and that kind of stuff in it. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll look into that. And I'm sorry about your cat.
Yeah, well, thank you. He was a really good cat. We called him Fang because my brother took him in as a feral cat, and they just didn't know what to do with him because he bit everybody all the time. And we were visiting for Christmas, and Louise and I took him home with us. This was back in 2007. And, I just, a couple of times he tried to bite me, and I just stick my finger down his throat and gag him. And after 4 or 5 times of that, he got it, and he just stopped trying to bite people, and he just turned into this wonderful cat. And he always slept with me. We've got a bunch of cats, and most of them all love Louise because she feeds them all. But he had decided he was my cat long ago, and when we first got him, and he just always wanted to sleep on my side of the bed, and if I'd walk around the house, he'd follow me, and he was just a really, really good cat. He was, and he's the only of our cats that's just, that had been a feral cat. And it was just a sweetheart. And this morning we got woken up around 4:30 in the morning. He was howling, just and we got up to see what was going on, and he had crawled into the closet. And was just trying to find a dark place to die, basically. And so we held him and tried to soften his transition. And after about an hour and a half, he just stopped breathing. It's just
it's so tough.
Yeah.
Well, we have one of those. We had a feral cat that had the kittens in our garage. Mm-hmm. And only one survived, and so we have that one. And
oh, sweet. Yeah.
He's still a little half feral, so maybe we need to remember your trick.
Yeah. Well, Fang was a kitten when my brother Steve took him in, and we got him maybe 2 weeks later, but they had to keep him in a separate room because he was just so crazed. But he turned out to be just this wonderful, wonderful cat. Sharon, thank you for the call. It's nice talking with you. We'll be right back. It is 27 minutes past the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
This is the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Unsettling Truths, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery by Mark Charles and Soon Chan Ra. This is from chapter 1. You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited. I, Mark, said this almost under my breath as I walked past a line of men dressed as Spanish sailors from the 1490s. I was in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C., near the massive statue of Christopher Columbus overlooking the United States Capitol. Every Columbus Day, there's an official ceremony in this plaza honoring Columbus as the discoverer of America. I had stumbled upon this ceremony by accident the year prior. There were a few non-natives holding signs and protesting the ceremony, but nothing very disruptive. I went back the following year primarily out of curiosity. I wasn't intending to protest, nor did I want to make a scene. As I walked up behind the statue and approached the group of men dressed as Spanish sailors, the words just came out of my mouth. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I walked further down the line, I said it again, this time a little louder. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. As I continued walking, I came to the front of the line where a group of men dressed in suits were standing. I repeated myself, making sure they could hear me. You cannot discover lands already inhabited. Suck it up, was the reply I heard as I kept walking. By this time, I'd walked around the statue and reached the front where a small stage had been erected and chairs set up for people to watch the ceremony. It hadn't started yet, but more than half the audience was seated waiting for it to begin. So I stopped near the center, turned toward the crowd, and in a calm but loud voice I said to the people, "You cannot discover lands already inhabited. That process is known as stealing, conquering, or colonizing. The fact that America calls what Columbus did discovery reveals the implicit racial bias of the country, that Native Americans are not fully human." Quickly, one of the white men dressed in a suit walked over and interrupted me. "You are not welcome here," he said as he grabbed my arm and began walking me away. I attempted to explain the inappropriateness of both celebrating this holiday as well as hosting this ceremony, but instead of engaging in conversation, he threatened me with arrest and escorted me from the area. As I walked away from the gathering, I was amused at his words and the irony of their context. A white man participating in a public ceremony honoring Christopher Columbus as the discoverer of America, telling a native man he was not welcome in that space. How did a flawed assumption about the place of the indigenous population in U.S. society become normative? How are assumptions so deeply ingrained in the American psyche and imagination that dysfunctional and oppressive actions emerge? How did a dysfunctional idea and worldview form that allows for the displacement of native bodies? One of the explanations for the formation of this dysfunctional worldview is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is a set of legal principles that govern the European colonizing powers, particularly during the administration of indigenous land, regarding the administration. It is the primary legal precedent that still controls native affairs and rights, and international law formulated in the 15th and 16th centuries. From a theological perspective, the legal and political role of the doctrine of discovery is rooted in a dysfunctional theological imagination that shaped the European colonial settler worldview. The doctrine emerged from a series of 15th century papal bulls, which are official decrees by the Pope that carry the full weight of his ecclesiastical office. On June 18, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus, which initiated the first set of documents that would compose the doctrine of discovery. The official decree of the Pope granted permission to King Alfonso V of Portugal, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit. End of quote from Pope Nicholas's papal bull of 1452. Dum Diversus would identify the Saracens, a common term for Muslims at the time, and pagans, essentially identifying any non-Christians as others, as those who could be targeted for, quote, perpetual slavery. The papal bull intentionally used language that identified those outside the European Christian world and enforced the Western theological imagination of non-Europeans as other. The Portuguese took these ecclesiastical statements to heart and perpetrated the slave trade from the African continent to the European and the American continents. As a Christian ruler, the King of Portugal would have power endowed from the church to take possession of the other as slave labor from the continent of Africa. The pagan African body was just another commodity to be taken for the pleasure and profit of the European Christian body, the one made most fully in the image of God. In the January of 1454, Pope Nicholas authored another bull. The book is Unsettling Truths by Charles and Ra.
Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it.
Trump in the wings with the lights going black. Script in his fist, no plan to come back. The White House a set, the flag just a prop. Truth takes a bullet, the cameras don't stop. He's never been real, but the danger is true. He's gambling with lives for a headline or two. The audience cheers as the nation breaks down. He laughs at the fire as he melts off the crown. The show must go on, no matter who dies. Trump feeds on the drama, the pain and the lies. The lights are still flashing, the stage is still red. He'll dance through the ashes, over bodies and dread. And the credits won't roll till the world's overdrawn. But don't change the channel, the show must go on.
Yeah, that's the point that I made earlier, is that Donald Trump views this whole thing as a show. It's the only thing he knows how to do. He was trained very well by NBC, and knows how to be a showman. He knows how to do a reality show, and that's what's happened. We're watching the Trump reality show, and every day is some new adventure and some new revelation and some new bit of suspense. And meanwhile, Trump's kids are organizing $3 billion projects in 3 countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. All 3 of those countries now have multi-billion-dollar or billion-dollar Trump-branded properties or projects going on, where all this money is going to be flowing back to Trump. And where is Trump as president going? Those 3 countries. I mean, this is as corrupt as it can possibly get. And now we're discovering that there's this new Bitcoin, there's a new cryptocurrency deal that Trump wants to take public on the NASDAQ this week that is being funded by Saudi Arabia. Again, more money going directly into Donald Trump's pockets. It's incredible. It's just incredible. It's so corrupt. What's on your mind? Isaiah in St. Louis, Missouri. Hey, Isaiah, what's up?
Yeah, hello, Tom. I actually have a multi-part question for you. Why do people keep saying that we're going to go into a recession when arguably we're actually in a depression worse than the Great Depression, based off the fact that it's harder to buy a house now than it was then?
Well, the ability to buy a house has never been something that has been used to define whether you're in a recession or a depression. Typically, it's been unemployment. That's the main variable, and whether or not GDP is expanding or collapsing. But okay. You're absolutely right. I mean, when my dad bought the house that I grew up in 1957, he bought that house for $13,000, and he was making about $7,000 a year, in a tool and die shop. So back then, the average house cost about twice the average American salary. And today, the average house in America costs 10 times the average American salary. And the reason for that is that we've allowed housing, particularly since 2008, since the housing crisis, we've allowed housing to be a commodity that Wall Street can invest in, and foreign governments and foreign individuals, foreign billionaires can invest in. And as a result, we have more empty properties, investment properties that are empty in the United States than we do homeless people. I mean, it's just crazy. And Democrats keep saying they want to do something about this, although they haven't when they've had power. And Republicans keep saying, oh, no, just let the free market, but I think housing is more important than the free market, frankly.
Matter of fact, you saying the Democrats haven't done anything about it, that's actually my biggest issue with the Democratic Party. Like, they're just letting everything stay horrible. Like, quality of life and cost of living in general is very relevant.
Yeah, not everything. I mean, the Democrats did a hell of a lot of good during the Biden administration. They worked really hard to make it possible for people to get union jobs and for unions to be, active. Biden brought a lot of manufacturing back to the United States. The CHIPS Act, you've got factories being built across the United States. You've got infrastructure being built. But yeah, there's a number of things that they haven't done, and I would like to see them get to. But right now, they don't have the power to do any of it. So we're stuck with Republicans trying to deconstruct the United States, probably because Vladimir Putin told Trump to do it. Isaiah, thanks for the call. AJ in La Mesa, California. Hey, AJ, what's up?
Tom, on the loss of your family member, it brought to mind the words of a poet I'd like to share with you.
Okay.
This is from On a Sundial, from Sonnets and Verse, 1938, by Hilaire Belloc. Loss and possession, death and life are one. There falls no shadow where there shines no sun.
Sweet. Sweet. I like it. Thank you, AJ.
I lost a feline member of the family back in 2006 after 18 years with us. He was a stray that we had taken off the streets. We're afraid of people. Anyway, so yeah, it leaves a gap. Take good care, Tom.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate the kind words. Jeff in Portland. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Sorry about Fang passing away. My condolences.
Yeah. It's the other end of life, right?
Yeah. It's but never easy. And you know, Tom, I was going to say you started this show in the dark days of the W. Bush era, and I think it's important to note, as John earlier pointed out, that the policies framework for fascism in America, they were laid out by Bush and Cheney, and not just the Patriot Act, but also Guantanamo Bay, the Department of Homeland Security, and of course ICE.
Yep.
But you know, so they're relatively new agencies in the history of our country, which, in my opinion, should make what they're doing even more shocking and appalling. And you know, we really need more Democrats to be decrying this fast-moving drift toward fascism. And your buddy Dino Badala, he wrote a good Dean's report over the weekend demanding that ICE stop wearing masks when they're making these brazen arrests.
I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. You know, they're arresting the mayor of the biggest city in New Jersey for no reason. And, you know, the irony being pointed out is that while these ICE agents are, when they're doing these illegal arrests, the Trump regime is at the same time demanding that universities ban student protesters from wearing masks. So let's highlight the hypocrisy and the irony there. And let's remember the students being abducted and detained have simply been peacefully protesting what's an ongoing ethnic cleansing and forced starvation in Gaza. But anyhow, Tom, A, let's get these ICE guys to take their mask off, and B, let's send a loud and clear message that those flouting due process and following unlawful orders will ultimately be held accountable. I saw a great little video by the Lincoln Project called On the Hook last week, you know, saying exactly that, you know, just like Nuremberg, it's no excuse to say you're just
justice
following orders. Yeah, so you know, and the Lincoln Project's a group of Republicans or ex-Republicans. We need the Democrats to be using hard-hitting messages like that and getting the word out to these guys.
I agree. Yeah, the Republicans have been masters of messaging for a long, long time, and the Democrats need to step up their game. Jeff, thank you. Spot on. Steve in Bombay, New York. Hey, Steve, what's up?
You've been in my living room for the last 20 years, so I hope that you will take this call as sort of a friend who says you might have gone astray, and so you need to take another look at it. I was wanting to call about your stance on the Ukraine war and some of the different, I mean, as I say, it was 2 years, and you weren't very welcoming of calling for peace talks. And I just recently heard you say that Jeffrey Sachs, you didn't agree with him, but actually you didn't agree with him then, but you agree with him now, because I think I heard you say it's time for talks in Ukraine. But anyway, the question I have two questions about SDS, if you don't mind. Did Louise find you before, during, or after SDS?
SDS? Students for Democratic Society?
Yeah.
Oh, it was right in the middle of it.
Oh, there you go. So she knows that you had a revolutionary thought. And at that time, you also were very acutely aware of war, I assume, right? Vietnam. I'm your age. Hey, did you read Ramparts magazine, by the way?
I did, yeah.
my favorite. And of course, the other thing that was great was Hunter S. Thompson's review of the Nixon 72 convention.
Yep, Fear and Loathing in the. Yep.
Okay, so anyway, that was you back then. Now, this is kind of a trap. I don't mean to be mean, but somehow you went from that kind of a person to the kind of person who is now saying the only way for this war to end in Ukraine is for Putin to leave. And
Putin started it. Steve, Putin started this thing. He bombed the crap out of a country next door to him. You don't allow that. It should not happen. I mean, this is the first time, this is the first act of aggression that we've seen in Europe since World War II. It's the first time one country stole land from another country. It's wrong. And the other country that got their land stolen, Ukraine, is a democracy, and Russia is not. It's a dictatorship. I was an advocate for democracy in 1967 when I joined SDS, and I'm an advocate for democracy today. Putin is a bloodthirsty dictator who has stolen over 100,000 children from Ukraine and sold many of them into sexual slavery in Russia, if reports are to be believed. He's killed thousands, tens of thousands of innocent Ukrainian civilians, seized land, he's destroyed properties. The guy is an international criminal. And anybody who is defending that or saying, oh, well, maybe we should, whatever. I mean, it's just BS, Steve. I'm not buying it.
Well, the thing is, I, as an anti-war person, my whole life have been.
Well, if you're anti-war, you should be anti-Putin because he's the one who started this war. He invaded a sovereign country twice. He did it in 2014 with Crimea, and then he did it again, 3 years ago when he tried to take Kyiv.
I got my facts from Wikipedia on the many referendums that were in Crimea, and quite frankly, they're all 70%. So,
those referendums were complete BS, Stephen. You know it. Come on. Putin seized those territories and then said to the people, now, are you going to vote for me or not? Because if you don't vote for me, I might just kill you. I mean, come on. Give me a effing break. I'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I am so over it with these tankies. We'll be right back. Stick around. And welcome back. Sarah in Arlington, Virginia. Hey, Sarah, what's up?
Hi. I was wondering, what is your take on Elon, the whole issue about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. going after autistic people and wanting to put them on a registry when the biggest creep in the world, Elon Musk, who is autistic himself, would he want to put him on that registry too? As somebody who lives with it day in and day out and also blind, it's very angering and very frustrating to me, and I wish this guy would go away, but it's not going to happen considering the fact that he's a U.S. citizen. What we need to do about Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is possibly either impeach Trump and throw him out of office or wait until he leaves, and then we can strip Elon Musk of his citizenship and go after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for crimes against humanity.
Sounds good to me, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I share your concern. Any kind of registry is, by any big government is something that makes me a little nervous, and a registry of autistic people in the United States is particularly offensive. So, yeah, I'm with you. Sarah, thank you very much. You said it very well. Sonia in Vallejo, California. Hey, Sonia, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Hi, Tom. This is my second time ever calling. I've been a long-time listener since the days when you were on Air America. Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted to talk about was there's a few things. Well, the first one was the hypocrisy of Republican voters. So I was in a line for in Walmart this weekend, and so I was just minding my own business, and I had this gentleman say to me, the prices there are so high. And I said, well, you know why the prices are high. And I said, and I don't understand why they didn't do anything about the tariffs like at least 20 years ago. And then so he, in his basket, he had a few items, and he said, you see, these are not Chinese items. These are not Chinese items. And I'm like, this man is very ignorant. I mean, it was a box of rice-a-roni and a few other things. And, so I wanted to gauge him more, but I couldn't because then a clerk said, also he did mention that, well, Walmart is getting ready to lay off people, next week. Already they do not have enough workers, as it is. So what ended up happening, a clerk called him to come forward, and then he said real quickly before he went to the clerk, but I'm okay with the tariffs. The tariffs, I don't care. But I wanted to, to still engage, still try to talk to him and say, well, what about, I'm quite sure you're on Medicaid. What about, what will it take? Will he probably is going to cut your Medicaid, or he's probably, what pills are you taking? I just wanted to gauge him on that. Yeah. But, it's just that, just hearing the hypocrisy, it's like, voting against your own self-interest. And then lastly, I wanted to mention about, I came across an article, well, it was on a post on Facebook talking about they're going to essentially gut Section 8. Essentially gut Section 8, and that they're going to use a Willie Horton mentality in order to gut Section 8.
Of course they are. Of course they are. They racialize everything. Sonia, thank you. Spot on. And keep talking to Trump humpers there and try to deprogram them. Thank you, Sonia. It's 51 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled American Caesar, Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days. Check it out.
80 years gone since the last World War. We said, never again, but look what's in store. The rich got their cuts, the poor got ignored. Now the wolves are back and they're scratching the door. Is the Second Republican Great Depression knocking at America's door? Tariffs and lies with the truth in recession, and greed like we've never seen before. Is this the crash they've been waiting for? Is the Second Great Depression at our door?
Welcome back, 53 minutes past the hour. Victor in Pueblo, Colorado. Hey, Victor, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I don't think very many people are discussing this law firm. This lawsuit that's been filed by Stephen Miller's firm, American First Legal Foundation, against the Chief Justice and also the administrator of the courts. And basically what they're saying is it's tied under a Freedom of Information Act request. But within that lawsuit, they're making the claim that this judicial conference, which comes up with administrative rules and also with ethic rules,
right,
that should be run by the executive, since it's subject to the American Administrative Procedures Act.
Right.
My concern is that if the Chief Justice is supposed to be represented by the Department of Justice, that they walk in and confess the motion.
It's an interesting point. I mean, the agency is, I mean, the head of the agency is the Chief Justice by law, by statute. And you're right, they do, create the ethical guidelines and the rules under which our courts operate. So Stephen Miller is saying, no, I get to run this show?
Yeah, that's basically, it's in the body, because what happens is they're claiming they're looking for paperwork because of how some of the senators, White House, is raising hell about the ethics related
to the judicial conference, yeah.
Right. And how they came, and so they're requesting to know how about this decision-making came into place. And within it is a paragraph saying that courts only, all they do is deal with litigation.
Right.
That they're not supposed to, since this is subject to the APA rules, the executive should be running it.
Yeah.
So I think people really need to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, this is a quasi-independent agency that was, I believe it was created by Congress, wasn't it? The judicial
Right, but how many of the quasi-agencies? Right, but how many of the quasi-agencies are being taken over?
Right. No, that's my point. Is the argument that Miller and his group are making is that because Congress created this, Congress creates these agencies and then hands them off to the executive branch and says, you administer them, you write the checks for them, things like this. And I'm not sufficiently familiar with the genesis, the creation of the Judicial Conference to know if it was specifically set up under Article 3 or Article 2. Victor, I'm sorry, I just don't know the details on this. I am familiar with the lawsuit that you're talking, or the filing that you're talking about. We'll just have to wait and we'll see what happens, see how it shakes out. Victor, thank you for the call. Thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, includes you. So get out there, get active, tag. You're it. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you, and stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.